Welcome to the May 8th, 2017 meeting of the Marquette City Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you please rise with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, could we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Commissioner Cambenzi,
Here.
Commissioner Conley,
Here.
Commissioner Frazier,
Here.
Commissioner Plord,
Here.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldini,
Here.
and Mayor Campana.
Here. Commissioners, in front of you have the agenda for the evening. Would someone care to make a motion to accept it? Commissioner Frazier.
I make a motion to accept the agenda as conceived.
Would there be a second? Commissioner Baldini.
Support.
All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. We come to announcements. Tonight, this is a dead podium. We'll be using the one on the right, or to my right. One other thing. In regards to openings on committees and boards, we have 19 openings on 11 committees. These boards and committees function to study, suggest, and advise the city on topics of concern within the city. We need citizens who are willing to volunteer a few hours each month to help make Marquette a better city. You get to meet good people and they help make a difference in our city. If you're at all interested in this, in doing something like this, you have the time and the energy, please contact any of the commissioners or go to the city website or call the city manager's office. We'd appreciate you helping us out. Next, we come to boards and committees. First, we have two appointments for tonight. We have Michael Larson to the Planning Commission for an unexpired term ending 2/15/2018. And we have Linda O'Brien to the Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee for an unexpired term ending 4/1/2020. Do we have a motion to approve? Commissioner Reynolds.
I move that we appoint Michael Larson to the Planning Commission for an unexpired term ending February 15th, 2018, and Linda O'Brien to the Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee for an unexpired term ending April 1st, 2020.
Second, Commissioner Frazier.
Support.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? That also carries 7-0. Next, we have 4 reappointments. We have Elizabeth Beckman to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee for a term ending 6/1/2020. We have Lynette Van Welseners to the Harbor Advisory Committee for a term ending 6/1/2020. We have Christine Granger to the Public Art Task Force for a term ending 10/31/2017. And we have Doreen Friend to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee for a term ending 6/1/2020. Do I have a motion? Would someone like to make a motion? Commissioner Conley.
I move that we reappoint Elizabeth Beckman to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee for a term ending June 1st, 2020. Lynette Van Elseners, Harbor Advisory Committee for a term ending June 1, 2020. Christine Granger to the Public Art Task Force for a term ending October 31st, 2017. And Doreen Friend to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee for a term ending June 1st, 2020.
Is there a second? Commissioner Baldini?
Support.
Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That also carries 7-0. We have 3 presentations tonight. Is Jim Edwards here? I don't see him. Bria Larson, parents, child, none? Okay, we're going to put them last or third. Maybe they'll come in shortly. We are going to go to number 2, which is former commissioner and Executive Director Jason Schneider, who's going to present on the Marquette Chamber of Commerce. Jason?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for having me. I think Mike Angeli told me I have about 25 minutes to talk this evening.
No.
I'll try and make this really brief. I've come before you tonight because we just finished our second year of existence of the Marquette Chamber of Commerce, and we just kind of wanted to come in and give you an update. The city was instrumental in getting us started, along with the 9 businesses that got us off the ground. The city was one of our first members. The Marquette Chamber exists to enhance the local quality of life by supporting the business community in the Marquette area. We were founded in March of 2015. The Chamber exists primarily, if this works, primarily to empower our members. A Chamber of Commerce is something that is probably the most misunderstood brand across the entire United States. Some people think it's a visitors bureau, some people think it's an economic development organization, but in reality, we are a member empowerment group. We're a member association there to support just our members. So what we primarily do is we listen to each and every one of them. We've had 153 meetings in the last year just to listen to concerns of our members and try and help solve them. We do so primarily by trying to connect members to other members so that we can empower people to enhance their own lives rather than always outsourcing to somebody else to solve their problems. We build relationships. We've had 157 different networking events, 516 attendees. We have 4 different chamber teams, normally known as committees. And we've also been trying to help get some city commissioners meeting township trustees on a regular basis, because when we started, oftentimes you found elected officials didn't know neighboring elected officials, and we're just encouraging conversations to happen across boundaries. We also facilitate cooperative programming. Marquette 365, which is a community master calendar. We did a presentation to you a while back on that. It just went live 6 weeks ago, and we're about to do a full public unveiling in early June. We've got the Be Local, Buy Local program. It was a pretty ingenious buy local program, but it's an example of how we pull members together to actually make it happen, because that wasn't us, that was a number of our members. And the business ecosystem meetup and map, about a year ago, we pulled all of the economic development organizations in the county. I think there was 19 of them together to try and map out what resources are available and who to go to for who. So we've doubled in size since our last presentation to you a year ago. We're 2 years old, we're at 139 members. I know that's too small for most of the audience to see, but I at least wanted to give a listing of all of the members that we have. We're currently growing at about 3.8 members a month. It's been a pretty amazing acceleration for an organization in 2 years. Our champion sponsors and our supporting sponsors, these are the sponsors and members that have stepped up above and beyond a standard membership to really help get us off the ground. You know, again, the city is very much thanked for being a huge supporter from the beginning. Our board currently consists of Greg Andrews, private consultant, Patricia Barton, Ameriprise Financial, Matt Goujon from the Marquette Food Co-op, Natasha Koss, Northern Initiatives, Beth Milner Jewelry, Andrea Pernsteiner from the ORDOC, Sarah Reynolds from Hyde and Swaginen, and Rick Rhodes from TV6, and Christian Verardi from Edward Jones. There's something fairly unique about us in that our board is actually democratically elected by our members. We felt that it was really significant that all members have a say in the control of the organization rather than the board continually appoint further board members. And so all members get equal vote in who gets to serve on the board. Just an example of some of the bigger programming we've run in the last year. Our Be Local, Buy Local campaign was partnership with Greater Ishpeming-Negaunee Chamber of Commerce. The idea came out of 9 chamber committee members who were trying to figure out what to do to support local businesses beyond just a media campaign. So we pulled everybody together. We engaged 103 local businesses between October and the end of December. We had 2,100 people download an app that allowed them to track their purchases, tell us that they supported locally. And for doing that, we could track $553,000 in sales to local businesses. and it also gave businesses a direct communication tool with the people that are shopping from them. And we gave away $4,600 in buy local dollars. So we gave away a weekly prize to people who were using this app that were only usable at the local businesses. It was really an incredible engagement tool. It's a great example of how getting so many different people with different needs, whether it be media partners, retail partners, attorneys, all together to support something like this was really a great example. And we spent almost $30,000 in a media campaign pushing why purchasing local is important. Our other big program over this last year that the audience might be hearing of for the very first time is Marquette 365. Marquette 365 is a community master calendar. We've partnered with the Greater Ishmael Chamber of Commerce, the City of Marquette, Northern Michigan University, the MEDC, Travel Marquette, the DDA, Peter White Public Library, and I know I'm missing somebody in there, to kind of combine all of the calendars that currently exist. So as most of you know, you could go to Travel Marquette, you could go to the DDA, you could go to all of these different places and find some events, but not all of them. So we've gotten everybody to agree to, in some ways, giving up their calendar to put it into one calendar where it can then be rebroadcast out into everybody's websites individually. So it's one central database. People can put that into, you put an event into here and it will automatically go to the DDA's website. It'll automatically go to the Visitors Bureau website and Greater Ishmael Chamber of Commerce website. So we've raised $29,000. The city was a huge help in that. It came out of the Arts and Culture Master Plan. The city committed $6,000 the first year and $4,000 for the next 2 years to get this off the ground. And that really kind of gave faith from the other organizations that, yes, this is going to go somewhere. So we've raised $29,000 because of the city's initial engagement. We have $14,000 over the next 2 years, each year, to support the calendar program. Our gold sponsors, City, NMU, and the MEDC. Silver is Downtown Development Authority. Bronze sponsors, Travel Marquette, Peter White, JNCC, and Christian Variety of Edward Jones. These just kind of exemplify what we're about, which is pulling people together to make things happen that oftentimes a lot of naysayers might say are impossible. The calendar's been talked about for 20 years, and it's kind of amazing how many people would say, it's been tried, it's never going to work. This is what we do, is we pull people together and make things work that nobody thought could. So the official launch date is early June. So for those of you who are first hearing about it, it is live. You can find it at marquette365.com. You can register your organization, register events, and go through with it. Putting them on, we've got about 400 events on there now. So we will have our full publicity starting in June on that. Looking ahead, there's some cool stuff coming up in the next year. We're looking at opening a new office. There's a lot of rumors around on where it might be and how it's going to work, but we feel to be relevant to a modern economy where a lot of people are starting to do gig work and independent contracting and need small offices. We're opening what's kind of nationally known as a co-working space where people can rent private offices, cubicles, or just come in and have a seat. We will have conference facilities as well as all tech. So essentially you can pay for it month to month. You have all of your furnishings, you have all the technology that you need, you have conference room usage, and you have a community of people around you that are trying to work. No offense to our great local coffee shops and library, but oftentimes when you're in those places, you're having to deal with somebody visiting with their aunt or their grandmother, and it's just not a work environment. So we're looking to build that, and we hope to have that up and running in the next year. We're rebooting the Be Local, Buy Local program, and it will be tripling in size. We're investing about $30,000 in the new app. It's pretty exciting. We hope to be able to announce it, the full extent, in August. Scholarship funding. We've received a small grant that will allow us to send delegates to places like South by Southwest, which is a major festival in Austin, or other types of conferences to try and represent Marquette, to get people who work in that gig economy, that creative economy, to start considering, maybe I can relocate my business of myself and my other person to Marquette. So it's not really, it is an economic development strategy, but it's a subtle one, it's a different one. It's kind of exciting. We'll be unveiling that soon as well. Taking care of business survey. We plan to be working with the city and the DDA. We've received some grant funding to do a study on aligning business needs with city operations. So we've taken an example from a survey done out in Philly that basically asked, what do you need from business? Or what do businesses want from the city and how do they want to access it? You flip it on its head and then you ask all city staff, or you ask businesses, what do you want from your local government and how do you want to access it? So you can start seeing where some of the really clear places that people are just missing each other in communication are. And so we're looking forward to being able to work on that. A Marquette guidebook. This is something to be complementary to what Travel Marquette does. It is not meant to be a, come and visit our town. This is meant to be a history of our town, a coffee table book, something that not Travel Marquette, but the hospital or Northern can use as a recruiting tool, but it's also something that people who live locally are happy to see because maybe they learned something about Gaines's Rock or the Wooden Man that they didn't know. So kind of an in-depth look at who we are as a city, probably about 150 pages. We're currently in the fundraising process for that. Peer-to-peer education networks, basically utilizing the knowledge of our businesses to teach each other and coordinating peer-to-peer educational classes. And a new website just to be able to inform people on what's going on in the community and connect them better. So the next year is looking like a very busy year. And that's essentially the end. I know you guys have a long night, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Conley?
Thanks for what you do. I think you do economic development on the ground level, and it's needed. Thank you. Thanks for the calendar. I got a chance to look at it, and it's you can see the potential. It's maybe not all the pieces are in place, but it will be soon, and it'll be great. Looking through your presentation over the weekend, is it possible to become a member as an individual? Did I see
Absolutely. Community members are welcome to join.
that? Okay. Wait, what's if just an individual?
$75 annually.
$75 a year. Okay. Mm-hmm. As you develop your co-working office, will you be moving the Marquette Chamber of Commerce office into that as well? Will that
Yes.
be a combined
It will
consolidated?
it'll be an independent branded office space. So we're still arguing around the name, but if we call it, say, Marquette Co-working, the chamber office will be inside of it. So the businesses won't be in the chamber office. The chamber will be in this office with all of the others.
So in the building on 3rd Street that you have, you're going to move from that to this new location?
Correct.
then? Okay. All right. Thanks. That's
Certainly.
Commissioner Cambenzi?
Well, I'd like to say thank you, too, for all you've done in a very short amount of time. It shows. People notice that you are on the ground and doing things. One of the things I want to comment on is the elected official meetup. I haven't been able to go as much as I want to, but I went to the first meeting that you set up when you were still a city commissioner with the county. And we all came together, but it was odd because we just didn't do that. Now I think we look forward to it as elected officials. I'd still like to see us gather more with the county. I think there are a lot of things we share. One is Jack Vancouvering. Just knowing what they're doing on their end with the tax tribunal stuff and what we're doing on our end. I happened to be at a dark store meeting and I was learning through other members what the county was doing, and I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, I should I should be having these conversations, or we should as a group. And so you've taken that above and beyond where it started, and I just want to thank you for that, because oftentimes we don't get to have that opportunity unless it's meant or it's made by someone. And so as an outside entity, thank you. The second question I was going to ask was, what can we do as a city to be more business friendly? I think all of us on the commission were at the last MML conference on Mackinac Island, and Michael Schumann was the speaker. And I know you've been in touch with him. Do you have any thoughts from that side of it?
So yeah, Michael Schumann actually holds a lot of roots in where the Marquette Chamber came from. It was a 5-year-long conversation between local business owners, and it all started with Michael Schumann's book, The Small Mart Revolution. And the Taking Care of Business survey is actually being taken directly from an organization in Philly that Michael Schumann advised on the whole survey. So it all kind of ties in really well together, because it's not so much what can the city do to be more friendly, it's we need to have the conversations about where are the difficulties, because it's not just business that has difficulties. I guarantee from my time on the commission, staff also has difficulties with business. It goes both ways. And so it's a matter of finding out where the misalignments are and then working to pull them together into alignment.
If I can, real quickly, there was an article in the paper Saturday about another economic development group, and this one's coming from the governor and some local business people here. Do you have anything to do with that, or is that?
No, I've been asked my thoughts about it. And if you go back to TEDx Marquette, Bill Vida's speech in 2011 at TEDx, I think it kind of rooted from that, Central Upper Peninsula group. It'll be interesting to see the way that plays out. For me, when it comes to the chamber, I really try and keep my it feels weird saying it, but I try and keep my blinders onto economic development. I look at our business as the economic developers, and we're strictly here to support them. And that keeps me out of all of the big issues, because really the whole reason we exist is the average business owner in Marquette is struggling to keep their head above water. And they need to know that they're listened to, they need to know that they're supported. And that's our primary role.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Baldini?
Thank you, Jason, for your comments and for helping to pull us together. You've been talking about it for a number of years. But a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
The calendar, you've had a soft opening.
Yes.
And so it's online and people can
Yep.
check it out. Any major problems, like it blowing up or anything?
No. There's all sorts of little things that always bug me, like I think it was the family tab, the drop downs weren't working, but it's all the little glitchy stuff of first launching a website that we expect. But so far, everybody's been really excited about it. They can see how it's going to work, and it's actually gone really smoothly.
And then secondly, you've got a grant to do a study on economic issues within your containment area. What did you call it here?
Oh, the taking care of business?
Yes, taking care of business.
Yeah, we're looking at $16,000 for 2018.
When do you think that might be coming out?
Well,
Your results, excuse me.
Well, there's going to be a conversation with the city to see if the city can help fund some of the study, if the DDA can help fund some of the study. We'll be reaching out to business groups in general. And so we would hope that we can do it in the first quarter. If we plan now, we can have the survey done in the first quarter and then have results in the second.
Okay. All right, fine, thank you.
Certainly.
Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Frazier?
You do a lot of great work. I went to your Small Business Association meeting you had locally in town through somebody else. It was a great meeting just to get together with everybody and talk and just meet other business owners. I think it was great. It's an example of how the chamber does to help people in the community get together. I think it's a great, people could talk about what helps them do things, what does stuff, and it's interesting to see you need the city to give you some money. I mean, as a former commissioner, how hard that can be, so that's your game. How hard it is for us to prove that. That might be, I know you do great work, so probably won't make that hard, but the thing is, I know somebody that runs a summer theater, you probably knew who I'm talking about, that had a problem with some dates on there. Okay, just email you and you'll maybe look into that. I think it was before the soft launch or something like that. May have been corrected over time, but
Could have been.
I'll check with her and see if the dates are correct. If not, I'll just drop you an email and you'll know what I'm talking
Okay.
about with a certain somebody. You know what I'm talking about.
Please do.
Thanks, Jason. You great work.
Thank you.
Well, Jason, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming here for the presentation. I particularly like the community calendar. I've been on it a few times. It's going to be, to me, a very valuable asset to the community. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Good luck with the rest of the evening.
Stick around.
Maybe.
Okay, we come to our second presentation of the evening. It's about the Harbor Advisory Committee by Chairman Lynn Van Welzeners.
Good evening. It was close. Van Welsen Ayers. It's
We
a long
practice
last
that.
name, but I'm from the Harbor Advisory Committee, and we're just going to let you know what we've been up to for the last year. We too have a number of vacancies on our committee, but currently we have four members and a staff liaison. We've had 12 meetings, 10 regular meetings, 1 special meeting, and 1 city commission work session. We were established from the city commission with informal powers, duties, and procedures. We advise the city commission on shoreline and offshore waters near Marquette with an emphasis on the harbor and waterfront development regarding both pleasure craft, commercial vehicles, mooring fields, and launch facilities. Usually we have 7 members that serve 3-year terms, and our meetings are the 3rd Tuesday of every month at 5:15 in the Citizens Forum in Lakeview Arena. This past year, we have advised on a reconstruction plan for Presque Isle Marina. We supported the amendment to the 5-year plan for the Waterways Grant submission on April 1st of 2017. We supported plans for a long-term maintenance and replacement for the Cinder Pond Marina. We recommended 2017 marina rate structure. We supported plans for a kayak concessionaire at Presque Isle Park. We supported plans for interpretive signage for Lake Superior by the Marquette Senior High School students. We supported plans for the houseboat proposal using the ORDOC, and we attended the opening of the new Harbor Services building at the Cinder Pond Marina. This upcoming year, we'll be reviewing the strategic priorities in the Harbor Master Plan. We're going to engage in the waterfront use policies for the Hiawatha Water Trail, the non-motorized launches, the kayak outfitting, and those sort of things. We're going to advise on the waterfront projects which involve motorized and non-motorized watercraft, including the ORDOC. Some of our issues in discussion: future Lake Superior waterfront access and or use, including community recreational use of the waterfront, motorized and non-motorized recreational watercraft, commercial watercraft, winter recreational trends on the waterfront and or water, and then our committee membership and recruitment. We're always looking for members, and hopefully someone will be interested in joining us. Short, sweet. Does anyone have any questions?
Commissioner Baldini.
Thank you, because this year you've had a very busy schedule, as you can see from there. But I got a couple of quick questions. The kayak, I assume you're going to monitor that, and maybe at the end of the season have something to report to us.
We can, yes.
Because I mean, we want to know, and so does the community. Does it work? How, that sort of thing. The houseboat. What is the status of the houseboat?
I actually am not sure. John, do you know where that stands?
Yeah, at this point, the entrepreneur is looking into working with the city and the DEQ on some of the bottomlands rules. So they have an idea, proposal, and they're looking to fit it within the rules.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thanks for your work.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Frazier.
One thing I'd like to comment is the harbors. I'm a boater, so I've been around harbors for a while, and I'm involved in the boating industry. I think you guys do great work. And like Commissioner Baldini said, something to keep an eye on is the kayak. We've got a lot of pushback from the community on the kayak thing, but if we said, hey, it's a 1-year process, and we'll see how it goes. And we've said that, the company went through all the jump through hoops, got permission from your board, the Presque Isle board, the Parks and Rec, all the boards, and got their grants to say yes or no. And we said, you guys are keeping an eye, the harbor, I think Presque Isle board would keep an eye on it more than you guys will, right? Because you get your hands full with all the harbor stuff, but you guys do a great job. And see a picture of some ice in the harbor. Was that from back in spring break, maybe?
I believe it was last year.
I mean, we had that one year we had ice till I think July 4th or something that one year, but this year we had lucky. The ice was gone early. I know the Coast Guard contacted me about launching their boat, and I said, I got back into town after a vacation, and I said, there's still ice out in the harbor. They said, we don't care. So, okay. But I think it's great. You guys have a lot of stuff. And I've tried to talk to many people about joining your committee. I said, it's a good community for boaters, and unfortunately lost a few. But the houseboat thing, I know the guy that's supposedly working on it. He's mentioned me a few times about it, but I've just kind of turned a blank ear and said, you have to talk to Harbor Advisory Committee about that whole, that's just, and I've talked to other boaters who have heard about it that are on docks nearby, and they're not happy about it, but we'll see what you guys decide on that whole, if it comes to that, when that process starts. I think it's a ways away, but good luck on that project.
Commissioner Cambenzi?
Well, I'd just like to thank you for all that you do, and certainly all of our committee members. You've had some controversial issues this year, and I know we have some vacancies. Some people stepped off. Some people looked at the marina more long-term, keeping the cost down. Other people looked at how much do we want to spend total. Difficult things, and now we have of course, the private kayak rental. And it just makes me go back to the simple fact that we might not have a good understanding of what our community wants, where they want to see it on our waterfront and not. So I just want to put another push in for all of our committees that deal with our waterfront and Presque Isle, that maybe we need to look at a long-term vision of what our community really wants with that lakeshore. And do we want certain places where we can have private businesses? Do we want those at the marinas? I mean, right now I feel like we're not helping you as much as possibly we could with getting that feedback to your group to be able to make those decisions, or when they come to us, having a little bit better, I guess, understanding of what people are thinking. And so thank you, hang in there. And if you do have any suggestions or needs from us, the Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee has been good about telling us what it needs. So within this next year, I hope if there's anything you guys need from us, please let us know.
Thank you.
Commissioner Conley?
Well, I want to thank you for the work. I'm a former HAC member myself, and I appreciate the work that you did and the fact that you came up with a workable and affordable plan for Presque Isle Marina. It was tough. I know there was a lot of pushback, but I think it's going to work out. We're real close to getting the Waterways grant and moving forward with that soon, but it wouldn't have happened without your work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Lynn, thank you very much for coming tonight, presenting. Thank you for the work you do on the committee. With the low membership, I realize it's harder than it is on most, so we do appreciate that. Hope you stay with it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I do not see the family of Bria Larson, right? They're not here. Okay, we're going to move to our first public hearing of the evening. First public hearing, we have two tonight. The first one is item 07-ZOA-11-16. It's a public hearing on the zoning ordinance amendments to address short-term rentals, which includes ordinances 650, 51, and 52. City Clerk, could you please give us the background on this?
Thank you, sir. The Planning Commission held a hearing on proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance that address short-term rentals at their November 1st, 2016 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended the City Commission adopt the amendments. During the time since the Planning Commission recommendation, City staff facilitated a community meeting where the City Commission was given an opportunity to discuss the recommendation with the Planning Commission and those in attendance. As well, City staff has vetted the ordinance amendments by reviewing against current practice and ensuring that the overall public sentiment has been addressed. These amendments facilitate the use of land for short-term rentals and prescribe standards for their placement. Subsequent City Code amendments for rental inspections by the Fire Department will address inspections, fees, and total number of rentals. Fiscal effect none. Recommendations: concur with the Planning Commission recommendation and adopt ordinances 650 through 652 as presented. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Okay, we're going to open this public hearing. Keep in mind, this deals only with proposed amendments to the This deals only with amendments to the zoning ordinance. It does not deal with the fire prevention inspection. That'll be the second public hearing. If anyone wishes to address the commission, you have 3 minutes. We need name, address, home address, city and/or township. Now, if anyone wants to address us on this item, please take the podium to my right. Does anybody wish to address the commission?
Good evening. My name is Nicole Young. I'm with Travel Marquette, and my home address is 219 East Arch in Marquette. I just wanted to thank the Planning Commission for all their work that they've put together, that they've done on this. It was a really long process. I know there was a lot of them that took a lot of time to do this. We've all heard many differing opinions about what the end result should be. I think in the end, with all the discussion, we realize that the plan that they've put forward protects our neighborhoods, and that's a #1 priority for this city. The vision that you guys have for this city has been incredible, and you've really worked to set Marquette up as a leader in the Upper Peninsula. And I think that providing this structure and the limitations for the program are very important. It's going to be a lot of work, what they're asking as far as running through it, but I think in the end it's going to be worth it because we'll preserve the very neighborhoods that make this city so thriving and pleasant to work in. We suggest that you keep a cap on how many rentals are allowed. Again, protect the neighborhoods, protect the nature of the city of Marquette. I would also suggest that you consider requiring the filing of a federal employer ID number, which will help you verify that people are at least set up to pay their state taxes, even though that's, of course, not your job to make sure that they pay them. But make that part of the process and build it in right up front. And again, we just thank you, Planning Commission, and thank you, City Commissioners, for all the work you've done on this. And again, the whole goal is to keep what we've built and keep it safe, while also allowing new activities and new uses for properties to come on board. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address the commission?
Good evening. I'm Sue Sholland. I live at 975 North Lakeshore Boulevard in Marquette, Michigan. And thank you for this evening and all the work you do. And just as someone interested in the short-term rental, everything about the short-term rental issue, I just want to say, as the owner of Nestle Down Bed and Breakfast, it just seems like it would be good to encourage and set up a plan that the short-term rental owner acts as a business in this town. And I think that would, I don't know, just as we've said before, make it a little more fair business environment for an establishment like ours, and in the hotels and probably other bed and breakfasts that might come along. But yeah, we feel that having some sort of a form that is standard, that when you're applying to be a short-term rental in the town, that you have certain things checked off. I agree with Nicole that a tax ID number. I'm not sure how it works as a short-term rental, but anytime you charge someone money for a room, you're making a sale. And the state of Michigan, that's actually, there should be sales tax paid. I'm wondering if at some point the state of Michigan will be looking at that and getting after it. But that seems reasonable to have your tax number, your your nearest neighbors, who you're listed with, your phone number, just a standard form that everyone who applies to be a short-term rental fills out and turns in and is reviewed. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I know we're a PUD, and we had pages of a form to adhere to, how we're parking cars, our drainage, everything. And every time we do our business license, we show a copy of our liability insurance that is sent in with our check for our business license in Marquette. So things like that. It is not your private home that you can do whatever you want with when you are renting your home and receiving money for nightly rentals to the traveling public. It's a business. It's not a new idea. It's been going on for a long time, just because the platforms are new. So that's what we're looking for at Nestledown is just a standard and a view of the short-term rental properties as businesses in the city of Marquette. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to address the commission?
Hello, my name is Yvonne Swart. I live at 225 North 4th Street here in Marquette City. I'm speaking on behalf of a few of my house members sitting in the audience with us today. We're not exactly sure, we don't want to take up too much time for our cooperative because we're not sure if we're actually counting as a short-term rental. The reason I'm speaking to you today is because of the language in the 650 zoning ordinance, specifically in 80.02. If you look at the family section, section D, it says the functional equivalent of a family shall not include a few different things, and then intentional communities. And while we think that the definition of intentional community does a pretty good job capturing what a cooperative is, we're just nervous about this language because it seems like, we already know that we're in violation of coding, and we've been very explicit about that and honest about that. And so our worry is that if this new language gets adopted, it'll pretty much guarantee that the city will come and give us, a couple of citations or violations. And we really would like to work with the Planning Commission and the City Commission to perhaps make some kind of conditional use permit, or even strike the intentional community from that section D in family. We aren't in government. We don't know exactly everything that's meant to go into this. So our suggestions are kind of limited, but it's that you instruct the Planning Commission to start trying to deal with this idea of a cooperative and seeing if it is viable with the definition of a single-family residential area, as well as instructing the city manager and the city in general to withhold enforcement on the single-family zoning with the understanding that we want to work with the Planning Commission. And finally, just directing us with, what we really are meant to do, because this is all new to us, and we'd really like some steering and some advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to address the commission? I gave you the wrong information. Did you wish to address us? Did you want to say something? Now would be the time, not later. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barb O'Neill, and my address is 773 Lakewood Lane in Marquette. And we have a short-term rental, and we have two of them in the city of Marquette. And we've had them for probably about 4 years. And they've been going great. We talk with our neighbors. The neighbors love that we've got a short-term rental there. And before that, it was a regular rental. And to be honest, this has worked out better than having a long-term rental. But we communicate with the neighbors, make sure everything's okay. It is, and we've had great tenants, and we love it. But I do understand that you have to have some restrictions within the city And what you proposed, from what I know, and I haven't read everything, is that they're reasonable. So I think as long as you keep them reasonable, and we pay our taxes, whatever, you know, and we have the fire department there. They go and inspect everything, so it's all well taken care of. But on the whole, it's worked well.
Thank you.
Nancy Semenoff, 1314 Picnic Rocks Drive here in Marquette. Just want to say thank you and want to support the fact of setting some conditions on short-term rentals. Particularly, as I understand it, and I don't know all of the details, but the fact that it's somewhat of a conservative approach, that there's the emphasis on preserving neighborhoods. I mean, just look at the fact of getting people to serve on committees and serve in the city. We want people in neighborhoods who are residents, who are going to be long-term residents, realizing that the city is changing and there are going to be short-term rental options as well. Secondly, if these are businesses of some sort, then I submit that these businesses should be taxed in some way. God knows the rest of us are paying a considerable amount of tax in this city, so I would hope that taxes would be levied against those who are providing short-term rentals as well. And again, if there's an issue of density of short-term rentals that I believe is being addressed, but I would hope that there'd be a look at some capping of the number of short-term rentals so that there's some balance. But the fact that there are some conditions, I think is very important. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the commission? Anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to close public hearing. First, before we move on, I'm going to ask the city manager, do you care to speak about the legislation that is happening in Lansing at this point in regards to this subject?
Sure, thank you. Two bills were introduced into the into the legislature last week, one in the House and one in the Senate, simultaneously to restrict the control or regulation of short-term rentals. I think the overall goal of the legislation is to prevent communities from banning them completely. You know, as a city, we have some concerns. First of all, it takes away the local control of this type of situation. We are a home rule city. But, you know, both issues are in committee, and as to whether they actually come out of committee or do move forward is yet to be determined. I would assume that part of that legislation also would include removing any restrictions on caps or things of that nature as a potential outcome. But I can't address it any further at this time.
Thank you. Commissioners, what's your choice? Commissioner Baldini.
I move we suspend the rules for discussion.
Would there be a second? Commissioner Plord.
I'll second.
Commissioner Baldini.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? That passes 7-0. Commissioner Baldini.
Thank you. I've been on the commission now for 3 years, and I don't believe we've spent this much time on any other issue. And I think the commissioners truly are conflicted. Every one of us has some idea about certain parts of it, and our planning commission has invested an inordinate amount of time in trying to deal with this particular issue. And it's tricky and it's difficult because it's new. And most of what we see out there in the newspapers and Times, Wall Street Journal, they're dealing with San Francisco and New Orleans and New York and not necessarily the small communities. And so we don't have much attention. But the fact that a bill was introduced in the legislature probably says some other people are beginning to listen to this. Matter of fact, today I thought, oh my God, we're here dealing with this one, and there is now a new one, Airbnb Diner. You can go to a community and go to somebody's house and have dinner. So that'll be something and matter of fact, I know some of the homes probably a good meal, but I suspect the county inspector won't be happy about that. But anyway, we've had short-term rentals in the city for a number of years, and it appears they've been illegal, and we haven't necessarily had any problems. But I think we're probably anticipating or a speculative proposition that we have. The thing that I'm conflicted by is that we're treating short-term rentals different than long-term rentals. I don't know how many long-term rentals we have in town. I live in a block, 6 homes. There are 3 long-term rentals. Okay? They're there, duplexes, and people make money. They charge rent. I include it as part of my income and my income tax. You're required by law to do that. And I suppose I don't support requiring getting an ID for short-term rentals if we're not going to do that for long-term rentals. I suppose if I have my druthers tonight, and I'm not speaking for the commission, but my druthers, I would like to do a safety inspection. I think we should do that. Marquette has taken a very strong, aggressive position on having safe rental units. And some years ago, the city had that discussion. It's been implemented. It works. And I think we have a safer community because of that. So I think we should, if we have short-term rentals, which we do, we should have a fire inspection for safety. I would just as soon not have a cap. Matter of fact, I think we're at about, the staff maybe can help me with 69 maybe short-term rentals. And it's been that way for a number of years now, a couple of years. It hasn't really moved. And I suppose I would also not, I don't like the idea of 1 per block. I think that's going to put our staff in a real bind, because what is the size of a block? Okay? And how do we, I mean, everybody who's doing it right now has to come in and make an application, and I'm quite sure the staff will put together an application, which I have to fill out for a long-term rental. I think we're only going to put the staff in a great deal of difficulty in that. We're going to license it. I think the commission, I think the commission's ready to vote and say, yes, we want fire inspection, and we do want to have something in place that you have to come and make an application for a short-term rental. We did a thing with food trucks a year ago, and we had a lot of discussion, a lot of thoughtful discussion, and we licensed, authorized food trucks, and we came back a year later, tinkered with it, and they're here, and they've been accepted, and they're part of this community. And I suppose what I'm looking for is, I do want safety. I do want some sort of certification. There will be a fee for that. But I probably would like to leave it a little looser. And a year from now or whatever, at some point, we come back with a much more in-depth, because we will have had people come. And the second resolution or the second ordinance we're going to pass tonight carries with it specifics in terms of fees and fines if you don't do that. I was also concerned about, what about those people in town who take a renter in from Northern, and they stay with them in their home, they provide some assistance, they're not advertising, so as I was advised, that doesn't necessarily apply for those individuals. So we're going to have to learn our way through this a little bit also for the short-term rentals. And that's why I'm suggesting we adopt something, which I think this commission wants to do tonight. I think there's also a sense that we want to adopt the fire one, and put that in, and insist upon an application process, which the staff will put that together. And really leave the other specificity in terms of space and numbers off of it for the present time. If all of a sudden we find everybody in town is going for a short-term rental, which I doubt will happen, we as a commission and the planning commission and the fire department, I'm quite certain, would advise us of that, and we could take some corrective action. So that's where I'm at. I'm not real definitive, and I suppose my position is I do want us to adopt a position, an ordinance tonight, that I do want us to set up a process where they have to come and submit that, and I do want a fire inspection. But I would like to leave the issue of the number per block and the proximity, the density that Nancy used the term, for another time. So, thank you.
Commissioner Plord, anything?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, it's been quite a subject, and I've listened to many, many conversations. I appreciate everybody that's come to the work sessions and the meetings. It's a very, very difficult subject, there's no doubt. And I think whatever we do, we're going to make some people mad, and I understand that, and I knew that when I took the job. From my point of view, what I've heard and seen so far, I don't think we can enforce a cap, and I would prefer not to have a cap. I don't think a cap would stand up in court. And people are willing to go to court. And I think a judge in a courtroom would say, well, gee, Mr. Smith on the 400 block of 4th Street is able to have a bed and or short-term rental, Airbnb, but Mr. Jones cannot because there's an ordinance that simply says he can't. I don't think we can enforce that. So I think that, I'm willing to vote for it at this point because I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Baldini. We're not close to the cap at this point. I also think this is a work in progress, and we will make the progress, just as Mayor Pro Tem Baldini was talking about the food trucks. It's something we're not really used to at this point. We're just kind of figuring our way through. And as a city commissioner, I don't see myself being able to say to someone, yes, all your children are gone. You have an opportunity to make extra money by renting out their rooms, but you can't. Why can't you? Well, because the city commission passed an ordinance that says you can't. There's already 3 on your block. And so, I'm very, very dubious to that. It's going to, I don't know if we can enforce that. A couple of the good things I've heard about it is at this point right now, I have heard of no problems whatsoever. The police department says they've had no problems with anybody, short-term renters. People in neighborhoods have said they've had absolutely no problems with short-term renters whatsoever. And so I understand, I take that under advisement. I also understand that it is, and I'm sensitive to the businesses in town who believe that that's competition. I understand your position, and I appreciate your position, and thank you for bringing it up. I don't know how much competition it really is. Another thing I've come to understand is that there seems to be 2 kinds of visitors. People who like and will book a hotel, and people who don't like a hotel and want a house for a lot of different reasons. And I'm sensitive to those reasons as well. I think they're good reasons, and I don't see, as I'm sitting right here right now today, I don't see short-term rentals as being that much competition to hotels in town where it's really going to dip into their business. Especially if you look at tourist season last year and how the hotel rooms were being distributed and how much they cost. This year, I note that gas prices are down right away. It was big in the news. That was huge for tourism last year. I'm expecting to see a fair amount of tourism this year, especially if we get the good weather we had last year, although we don't have it yet. Anybody wants to do a Sundance, I'm with you. But with all of that being said, I also agree with Mayor Pro Tem Baldini. We do need to have to keep them safe. Absolutely, we need to keep them safe. I think the fire department has done a great job safety inspections. I think we're doing a good job with fees, and the fees we're setting are simply the cost of what it's going to be to inspect the area. And so at this point, I'm willing to vote for the ordinances because I also agree with Mayor Pro Tem Baldini when he says this is a good starting point. We have to start somewhere. One of the good things about the city of Marquette and all through the Central UP is we do work through things and we do tweak things as they go along. We don't have any history at this point right now with ordinances. And so I think it would take a year to find out whether these ordinances work the way we intend them to work or not, and if they don't, then we can make the changes later on. But I like the idea of short-term rentals. I'll be clear on that. I know a lot of people who like the idea of short-term rentals, and so I have no intention, from my personal standpoint, of outlawing in any way short-term rentals. And I don't think anybody else does. One last thing I want to mention, when it comes to taxes, I would love to be able to set a fee of some sort to have the city receive some compensation, or revenue, I guess is a better word. We've gone around with City Attorney Ron Keefe about that, and he is pretty adamant that the state of Michigan law says we just can't, at least at this point. I would urge you to contact your legislators, contact all the legislators in Michigan and let them know what you want and what you don't want, because our hands really are tied. And when it comes to raising fees for the city, when it comes to water and electricity, all those other fees we've talked about in the last bunch of meetings, that's a problem. The revenue that we're getting from Lansing is very, very, very low, and it's getting lower all the time. And we'd love to be able to break something loose in Lansing so that we can have more revenue for the city, so we don't have to raise fees, or at least give our residents some break on some of those fees. We're already, city staff, I'm very convinced that they're doing as good a job, a great job actually, and keeping all the fees and taxes as low as they possibly can go. But we have to have operating costs. You all know that. You understand that. And I think you understand what I mean when I say, we're our hands are tied in a lot of ways with fees and that. But I do want to thank the Planning Commission, as Mayor Campana says, and Mayor Pro Tem Baldini says, you guys done some great work, yeoman work. It's probably not quite done yet, but you guys have put your nose to the grindstone. You've done a great job, and I definitely appreciate it. You give us a lot to work with. This is hardly a subject that's going to be closed tonight, but we'll go forward with it. And thank you, Your Honor.
Commissioner Frazier?
I agree. This is a complicated subject. I had a rental house in college. I went to school downstate, and I didn't do it to make money. I did it just to pay the bills of the house. Different than other people that have rental houses in town that they make some money off it. That's fine. It's a source of income for them. Maybe it's a side business. I don't know. So I think we have to work on, like Commissioner Bellini, just work on language. Short term versus long term. What's the definition? You're thinking about short term, is that technically like a hotel room, or is it like long term? Could be 6 months. Could be like Tom said, MU students. I had a lot of friends in college that rented houses that were in pretty bad shape. So I understand now the safety codes. That's important. I mean, to get all that stuff figured out. That's very wise. And like I said, I went to Chamber of Commerce. Went with him to a small business association meeting. One of the comments, the guy says, "What keeps you up at night?" I said, "Well, this is a subject that keeps our planning commission up at night all the time. In fact, I think a few friends of mine, the planning commissioners, they have nightmares about it once in a while." But other than that, it's a good subject, and I think we'll get started. Just a matter of feet. I understand. I had talked about this when I was I rented my house. I didn't understand why I always deal with the city on this. I lived out of town. I didn't understand. Now I understand. Now looking at it from the city's point of view. You want to make it safe. A lot of friends rented in houses that were in pretty bad shape. You got to make sure it's just not like a slumlord thing. People that that do rentals that are in good shape and follow the law, that's great. And like I said, make sure they pay the taxes and file all the paperwork. I think that's great. So it's a process that we're just getting started, and we'll figure it out. We'll make room for it.
Commissioner Conley?
Well, I want to thank the Planning Commission, who's worked hard on this for over a year. We've had a couple of meetings with them. They've gone back and done the work and brought this. And I think it's a good starting place. I will support it. I think there is a reason to treat short-term rentals differently than long-term rentals. Short-term rentals are people who are our guests in the community and come and visit us. People who live in long-term rentals are part of our community. They live here, they work here, they vote here, they send their kids to school here. It's a whole different idea. And you don't have to be a property owner to be a member of this community. But if you're only here for a weekend and you're staying in a short-term rental, you're not part of the community. So there is a reason to treat them differently. I think in terms of, I'm not a lawyer, but I think the city has a compelling reason to put limits on it, both in terms of blocks and in terms of overall limits, because it's a question of neighborhood preservation, and that would be our reason for doing this, not to limit business or to preserve the hotel owners or something like that, but that's important to me too. But it's more, we're trying to preserve our neighborhoods. I think we could take that to court and prevail just on that issue alone. As long as it's home rule and the House of Representatives of the state and the Senate don't overrule us and take our home rule away. There's no going back on the limits. I think we can set the limits now. It's certainly well above what we think the number is, but we don't have any idea how many short-term rentals there are. We know that there's 69 that we know of, 68 that we know of. There's probably a lot more. We just don't have the way. These ordinances, these two ideas, and there's two separate parts here. We're just talking about the zoning portion right now. In a few minutes, we'll be talking about the fire code. Boy, I'm telling you, sometimes I just get carried away. So anyway, we don't know how many there really are. We're putting a cap at 250. I once was thinking 100 might be great, but 250 seems a little more reasonable. It's going to come under that cap, and we'll be able to make an adjustment in a year. This ordinance and the fire code part of it with the fees and that will help us get the software that will really help us find out how many are out there, and will help us with compliance with this in terms of fire inspections of that. In a year from now, we'll have a better idea how many there are out there. But I think it's best to start conservatively, cap it, and then let it grow if we feel that neighborhoods still have their interests preserved, if we let this loosen up just a little bit. Are there any problems with short-term rentals now? I'm sure not. I sure don't see it. And I'm sure there's some in my neighborhood too. But we're trying to get out in front of this. We're trying to put in ordinances rather than putting out fires. We're trying to prevent them, and not in both in a number of ways too. But we're trying to stay ahead of this and adjust accordingly. So that's why I think we have an interest in moving ahead with these zoning ordinance changes as presented. Thank you.
Commissioner Reynolds.
Well, I have a couple questions, and then I'll make my comments. Questions are as to what my other two commissioners next to me alluded to. So it's for Blake, Captain Rebolt, and for Ian Davis, and that's to the problems of short-term rentals, if there's particularly been any other than people failing to register.
I've just had one complaint in the last 3 years. Might as well stand. Sure. Probably a good idea. Yes, Commissioner. In the last 3 years, we've had one complaint on short-term rentals, and that's out of, I would guess, dozens that we get every year. The majority of them are all on the long-term rentals.
Okay. And then you might be able, I'm not sure if this is a Dennis question or you, but when I was reading through this, and it might be in the next section, so I apologize, but from what I understand is that 4 unrelated people cannot live together, but they can in short-term rentals. Is that a Dennis question?
In the zoning ordinance now, and it'll carry forward in this amendment, you can have up to 4 unrelated people in any type of rental, short-term or long-term.
But does short-term go more? Like, I swear the number's 6.
Yes, it does.
Go ahead,
There's no cap on it the way it's written right now. Dave can probably speak to it better than I can, but.
So, yes, Commissioners, in the definitions that you have in this proposal, the family definition includes an exception for short-term rental properties. Because if you don't do that, then we'll have more than 4 unrelated people in a dwelling unit in the city and not as a family. So we don't want to be in that situation where on the one hand, every day we're saying in houses people own and rent in any style that 4 unrelated is the limit, but with short terms, it's not. So that's why in the definition, there's an exemption written in there that a family can be considered the residents, the occupants of a short-term rental for the duration of that rental stay.
Okay, that's what I thought I understood with it, which causes me a little bit of concern that we're treating short terms different than long terms. I haven't been particularly shy how I feel about this short-term rental ordinance over time. Everybody knows I do not like it. I'm more on Commissioner Baldini's standpoint that I'd rather have a registration, fire inspection, and a 1-year review period afterwards. The reason that this even came forward is because Chief Davis came to us and said there's a fire hazard problem, not because there's problems around the city with police or anything else. It's for fire protection. So, as is, I will not be voting for this. I would vote for some kind of a change to this, but I'm more on Commissioner Baldini's standpoint of how to go forward with this.
Commissioner Cambenzi.
Well, I don't want to say too much on this. I think we've beaten this up quite a bit. There are obviously things I don't like about it, but our planning commission, our chair and our vice chair are here, and they've been at every one of our meetings. We've discussed this. They've put so much time into this, given the parameters we have, the fees we can charge, parking, everything, that I think at this point we need to see how it goes for a year. We can make the changes after a year, but I think we've reached an agreement with our neighborhoods that it's not just going to be, whatever anyone wants. The part that I guess I'm still the most unsure on, one, I think that brings up a good point about treating short terms and long-term rentals differently with the number of occupants allowed, simply because if it's for fire safety, it seems like it should be set at the same rates, the same unit. But I still think the majority of complaints I get, other than the people that are worried about their neighborhoods, have to do with the fairness and the fees. And I think this brings in our hotels. None of us want to see our hotels that make considerable investments, taxes, stand to lose some ground. And I think there's a way that, and hopefully we'll get there if the state doesn't interfere with our local zoning, that the market will kind of take care of itself. And I think there are a lot of people in the community that look at this and at first think, this is wonderful, I want to do it. And then they realize every 2 or 3 days they're cleaning bathrooms, they're vacuuming, they're hiring a whole nother person to actually come in and help run this. And so I guess the luster might wear off, and I really do think a natural marketplace will control that. You get rated on how you do. If people want to come back, everyone can see that. I think we have to pass it tonight to see where it goes, and also to see where the state legislation comes out, because I absolutely do not want the state and our state legislators telling us we have to have something, that we can't have parameters, that we can't limit the amount if we want to do that. I guess I see that as the biggest problem right now. With the hotels, there is I believe it's a constitutional provision that they do pay a percentage into the state that goes into marketing or some promotional fee. And I guess if this is going to be here to stay, if we have these, the only thing I would recommend our state legislators do is actually help us collect our fee that maybe goes to recreation or goes to something that comes back to the cities, because we don't get increased tax dollars from this. If you are a homeowner and you decide to rent out your home more than 50% of the time, your non-homestead taxes actually go to the state, so they don't come to the city. So the only fees the city is making, or the money, are the fees. And I don't think that's going to sit well with most homeowners that pay the same taxes as their next door neighbors, yet they're running a business out of it. I live in a multi-unit family home. I pay more taxes than a single family home. So I think there are some discrepancies as it stands. Very complicated, ordinance, but we have to I guess, see where it's at. I feel like we've done our due diligence. We've beaten it to death. For that reason, to look at it again in a year, I will be voting for this.
My feelings on this are that I agree with Commissioner Baldini pretty much most of the points that he made. One thing we have to realize that this is not good for hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts. Every time someone stays in a short-term rental, they're not staying in a hotel. So I mean, we all know that. No one's saying that, but it doesn't help them. The problem is the concept is too big. Airbnbs, VRBOs, it's a $30 billion industry. It's not going away. We can't change it. In fact, I look around trying to find other communities that have rules pertaining to short-term rentals. Nobody has it. I mean, they have it, but they don't. They're flimsy. I don't think anybody in Michigan has it that's very good. I find it hard to believe that Marquette's going to be the first to come out with it. I don't think we can or should. I think this is something that we got to grow with. We're not really ready to set the standard, but we're going to try to do something. This has been, it's been hanging on us for too long. What we're going to vote on tonight is which I think is what we have to do, is to allow the permitting or principal use of short-term rentals in our zoning ordinance. That's what we want to do. When we do this, they're going to be inspected. That's coming up in the next item. They are on record as being registered. Consequently, they're going to pay more in taxes. So they are, in fact, paying a little bit more. They're going to lose their homestead to some degree. So they are, they're a business entity. They are being taxed at a higher rate. So they're maybe paying a little bit more. I can't say I'm crazy about them, but that's just the way it is. As far as numbering them per block, I just can't agree to that. I don't like regulations. The less regulations that we have in this city, the better. I don't like making it difficult. I just think even if we regulate it, we can't, if we put rules out there, we can't go check on these rules and regulate these people. I think we don't have the problem. Nobody's come up to me. Nobody's come up, as you heard, to the police chief, fire chief, and says we have a problem with short-term rentals. I say let it go. We don't need, why should a guy on a block, he gets it, but the guy next door to him doesn't? To me, it's not fair. It's just not fair. And how many in a city? Does it really matter? We don't have the problem here. I say all I am in favor of is just allow the principal use, allow the fire protection inspection, which comes up next, and look at it in a year. So that's how I'm going to look at it. We have a motion here coming up pretty soon, I feel. Can we change the motion so that everybody votes this? I'd like to move this on, but it's everybody's vote. There is no motion yet. No, we're coming up with a motion. Well, does Sarah wish to have... Sarah, Commissioner Reynolds, what would you care to say?
Well, while Ian was standing here, I was just going to ask one last question. Okay. Am I correct that we've been pre-registering short-term rentals, even though they're technically illegal? We've been registering them as of right now.
It's not that they're illegal. They do fall under the current rental fire safety code. We just haven't been able to identify them. Okay. When they're advertising on VRBO, Airbnb, they don't necessarily have their names, their addresses for us to find out who's actually doing it. So we're not as much re-registering. We have registered them already. It's just that we're not finding them all so far. I mean, a lot of this is just cleaning up the language so that it'll work better once we do have this process in for the short-term rentals. We're going to be changing the rates a little bit on both short-term and long-term. The main problem was finding them. We are going to be purchasing compliance software that data mines those websites, and so we'll have a very good idea of how many we have, who they are, and we can actually send out the registration packets
make sure they're inspected. But they actually do fall under the current code. Any residence that is let for rent at all in the city falls under this, what we have already.
Are we ready for a motion? Commissioner Baldini.
Okay. Your Honor, I would move that we adopt ordinance 650, 652 as presented with 2 deletions. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ron.
There's an ordinance 651 in that group, just to let you know.
There's 3 of them.
651 and 652.
Yeah, you want me to mention? Okay, I moved the adoption of ordinances 650, 651, and 652 with the deletion on ordinance 650. And I would propose that we delete item 3B of 80.20 single-family residential district, which pertains to the number of residencies may be permitted on each street. And I also move that we delete, not move, but my motion would have delete item 3B of 80.21 general residential district. Okay, those 2. If you want me to, I will read them.
Why don't you read them?
Okay, the one on 80.20 single-family residential district 3B is, and I'm proposing we delete this, 1 registered homestay and/or 1 registered vacation home rental may be permitted per street segment block face between intersections, except where the street segment block face is more than 500 linear feet long, in which case there may be 2 per street segment, provided that there is at least 100 feet measured horizontally between the property lines of adjacent short-term rental in the same street segment block face. Corner houses are assigned to the block face street segment that corresponds to the property street address. The zoning administrator shall keep a map of the registered and approved short-term rental for purposes of verifying their location and reviewing application for short-term rentals. And then I'm also proposing that we not include in this one 80.21 RG General Residential District, which is 3B of that one. 1 registered homestay and/or registered vacation home rental may be permitted per street segment face between the intersections, except where the street segment block face is more than 500 linear feet, in which case there may be 2 per street segment, provided that there is at least 100 feet measured horizontal between the property lines of adjacent short-term rentals in the same street segment corner house and assigned to the block of the registered zoning administrator. Corner houses are assigned to the block face segment that corresponds to the property street. The zoning administrator shall keep a map of the registered and approved short-term rentals for purpose of verifying their location and reviewing application for short-term rental. That's my motion.
So the short story is you're taking away the number per block.
Yes. And if the question comes up, the cap comes up in the other
Correct.
ordinance.
Correct.
Okay? Yeah.
Total city cap.
Yeah, city
Okay.
cap. Yeah.
This is just per block.
This is per block, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a second? Commissioner Plard.
I'll second.
I have a motion. Mayor, I have a motion to amend.
What is that motion?
That motion is to add back those deletions in ordinance 650, which would leave the ordinance as presented intact.
We need a second to that
I'll second that.
discussion. Commissioner Conley.
I've said it before. I think the city has a compelling interest in preserving neighborhoods, and the caps will help us do that.
Commissioner Cambenzi.
Well, I just want to add this late in the game that I think this has been over a year-long process that we've looked at this, and in no way am I seeing everything I want to see in here. It's not an ordinance that's going to make everyone happy, but I feel like we have an ordinance that we need to try, and we need to put it out there for a year, maybe it's 8 months. It's some period of time that we give it a test run, I think, before we undo all the work of the Planning Commission and our staff. And if I could ask our planning commissioners that are here specifically why they felt these two parts were important, I think it would help all of us understand why this is even in there.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but the clock actually went backwards when Mayor Pro Tem Baldini was talking about what you guys are striking or not striking. Oh, Taylor Clipp, Chair of the Planning Commission. So you guys have talked about everything except, I think, Commissioner Conley, you're the only one who's really hammered on the neighborhood aspect, and I think that's where the limits come up and where the limits are really important. 250, there's maybe 70, there's probably 85 of these total, so we're talking about growing 3 times in the next year, and we know we're going to come back in the next year, and we're going to have to make some changes. We don't think these things are time bombs in any way, shape, or form, but what the block limits do, and in my mind, so there's a range of what we're talking about here. One is the homestays, and that's, I'm the nice person who has the college student, and I decide to do this legally. I live there, they're in my house. Don't put any limit on those. Those don't really have any bearing on the neighborhood. You basically have a border, this is old school rental. Then we move to the place maybe in the middle of the spectrum is, I own my house, I'm away for 4 weekends a year, and I have renters. And then on the far side of the spectrum, and this is the part that scares us, this is the piece that's terrifying. We don't think it's going to time bomb, but this is a little scary. Speculative buying. Somebody buys house. It's convenient if they put them all in one node. And now I've got this big glop of short-term rentals right in one part of the neighborhood. And what does that do? It oozes out into the rest of the neighborhood. So what we thought we'd do is say, let's put a little limit on this. And we talked about a waiver, so if somebody already has a short-term rental and they're right next to somebody else, same block face, all the junk, I didn't know what we wrote was that long. If they're still there and you waive them in, cool, they can still have it. This is a way to limit it, so if we find out, there's a couple block faces, maybe we go to 2 per. My thought is it's always harder, and the Planning Commission has always worked on this rule, it's always harder to take stuff away. You guys don't want to be up here with the lovely public and say, hey, one of you guys is now in a lottery system because short-term rentals aren't working. We think they are going to work. We just don't know because we don't have any data on this stuff. So that's really what we're thinking. When you're thinking about limiting, it's neighborhoods. It's speculation. It's keeping a working person in a house as much as possible. So that's really why we wanted to put it in.
If I could just make one more comment, I completely understand where Mayor Pro Tem Baldini and Commissioner Plort are coming from, because in many ways I'd like to see no limits or us allowing one here, one there. But I feel like the people who got up and spoke tonight are a good representation of everyone in our community that is willing to wait this out with us for a year. They're willing to see how it goes. And I think that's amazing, because we don't have people up here telling us it's wrong or to do anything differently. That's the main reason I want to go forward with this and just see how it goes.
Okay, we're still talking on the amendment.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Baldini.
If I recall, and Taylor, after reading these 3 or 4 times, great insomniac stuff. But anyway, I didn't see a waiver in here, okay? Mm-hmm. And one of the things I don't want us to encounter this first year is the city staff out measuring footage, okay? And getting into an argument and a fight this year. I think your comment, we are going to revisit this, and it is going to come back. and we're going to have to look at it. And there are, I think this commission is concerned about neighborhoods. But I think, I don't see this big explosion of Airbnbs in the next year. If it happens, then something else is going on, because we haven't seen it in the community over the past 2 or 3 years. And that's why I just think the fewer restrictions we have at this point, the better off we're going to be to do some evaluation. So, thank you.
Commissioner Plord?
To go along with that, maybe there might be speculative buying. I don't know how we can pass any law that can prevent that anyway. No home can be bought unless it's for sale. Now, maybe they're going to come to me in my home and they're going to offer me $1 million and say, Michael, we want your home? We'll give you $1 million. Well, I'll tell you, in that case, I'm selling. And no question about it. If they want it for short-term rental or whatever they want, I may ask them. They may not tell me. They may tell me. They may not. Doesn't matter. I don't know how we can enforce telling somebody from anywhere that they can't buy property in the city of Marquette. I've thought about it literally for months. I've asked people of knowledge, and I don't have an answer for that. Maybe that's going to happen. I don't see that happening. Is it that lucrative of a business where a conglomerate or a corporation might come in and they want to buy as many houses as they can? If that happens, I think we'll know about it, and I think we can deal with it at the time. But again, I don't know, how we can turn around and say, X, Y, and Z. You can't buy so many houses. The other thing is, I don't understand how we're preserving neighborhoods by putting caps on. I don't know how we're destroying neighborhoods by allowing short-term rentals. All I keep hearing again is from the chief of police and the fire chief and so many other people that there are no problems with short-term rentals. People in the neighborhood, the question I have now is, if we set these caps, are we allowing people in the neighborhood to decide who buys houses in their neighborhood or who doesn't? Simply based on what we're doing here. Maybe that's a reach. I'm not so sure. I think a lot of people in the city of Marquette will say, oh, you know what, the city commission said we're only going to allow so many houses to be sold on this particular neighborhood, or so many houses allowed in this particular neighborhood for short-term rental. We've stopped this group, maybe from the city of Marquette, from buying these homes. We're going to get it stopped too if these people over here want to buy homes in our neighborhood, these people over here want to buy homes in our neighborhood. How can we say that? How can we say you can't buy a home in this particular neighborhood because the people in this neighborhood don't like you for whatever reason, or they don't know you, they don't like you? A lot of the things I've heard about short-term rentals is simply, I don't like them. I don't want them in my neighborhood. I haven't heard really why, except that they don't like them, okay? I don't think that that's a legitimate reason to pass a law, if we can pass it, to say, thou shalt not be able to buy houses on this particular block because we've sold too many for short-term rentals already. So,
Commissioner Reynolds?
Just one quick point, and Mike, Angeli has his finger up as well, but one quick, in either of the motions, both the first motion and motion to amend, and in our recommendation, we do not have anything about 1-year review. So I do think that's important, because we did do that with our food trucks, and that's why it did come up a year later. Otherwise, this will not come up naturally a year later. So whatever this ends up being, I think it's important to add that in.
Commissioner Conley?
We aren't limiting sales. We're limiting use. You can buy a house all you want. We're not saying you can't buy the house. We're just saying we're going to preserve the neighborhood that house is in, and buy it and move in, long-term rent it. But short-term rentals are going to be limited, capped, spaced out, so that the nature of a single-family residence doesn't change. So buy and sell as much as you want. We just don't want speculation. Somebody wants to go into Picnic Rocks and buy all the lots there and speculate, then we're going to say, well, the first application in there is about all you get in that development. We're not limiting sales. We're limiting the use. We don't want a neighborhood or an area to turn into a short-term ghetto. People behave differently in short-term rentals than they do if they live there and they know their neighbors and they're part of that neighborhood. There are compelling reasons to preserve neighborhoods. So I think we have a justifiable reason to put limits on this. I agree that maybe the next amendment to this, if this goes any further, is to amend the ordinance to look at a 1-year review. I'm totally in favor of that because I don't think we're going to get any of this right. Are we out in front of everything or other communities? Yes. They are looking to us. I think we have the ability. It's our place as a leader community to do this. We do have density. We're an urban city that we have to do this. If people start, if we start getting too many, in my opinion, too many short-term rentals on a block, and we come back in a year, well, it's already happened. You can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. You're not going to be able to cut it back if it's already done. That's why we need to get out in front of it. Relax it in a year if we feel it's advisable, but preserve neighborhoods now and let this evolve over time.
Director Stakowicz, did you have something to add?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you guys are having a wonderful debate. I don't want to get in the middle of it, but there is a technical aspect that I believe you need to know about, and that is because it's in the zoning ordinance, and I think Commissioner Conley had alluded to this earlier, that there's no going back in zoning, and Chairman of the Planning Commission, Taylor Klipp, had also mentioned it. What they mean by that is legal non-conforming status. So if you choose not to limit the number on a block right now, and it turns out that we have 5 on a block under the current ordinance without limits, if you decide that's not working later on, you're not going to be able to change that for some time because they will be given what's called legal non-conforming status or grandfathered in that. So just a concern. The way the zoning ordinance is set up now, if you have a legally non-conforming property that at one time was allowed and then the ordinance changed and it's not a permitted use anymore, or so on and so forth, there's a number of things that have to happen for that to lose its status. Like generally it's considered if it's abandoned for 6 months. If that use isn't done for 6 months or so, then it loses that status. So it's just kind of a legal quasi-technical thing that I wanted you to know about because it is pertinent to the discussion you're having. Probably clear as mud.
Thank you. Commissioner Frazier, you had something to add?
I'm not going to beat this to death. We've already discussed it enough. And I knew, according to that meeting I was at with Director Chamber, that Planning Commission did lose sleep over this. I was pretty much figured that out, even with just hearing Taylor Klipp. You do lose sleep in this, don't you? And I think it's this is going to go back and forth. And I think, like they said, Ron's the best at telling us what's legal and what's not legal. So he'll tell us if we're doing something wrong. He'll tell us what's the law, what's not the law. I think it's good to make assumptions, make things rules, and like I said, better just have it adaptable later than not adaptable. That's a good point. And the fire chief said he can't keep track of everything. Maybe some volunteer firemen or maybe some retired firemen could call these VOBOs for you and say, I want to rent a room, and they could go in, they could tell you the address, they could inspect it for fire codes, and just give you an idea. Maybe you could give them a free hot dog or something like that of it. Just an idea. And some people I know that are retired firemen, they're probably willing to do something like that. It'd be a good idea just to check out things. And I think as long as our good lawyer there, Ron, tells us we're doing things legally, as long as he can tell us what's the legal, what's not legal, I'm for whatever we make up. And I think the rules thing is a good idea just to protect neighborhoods because we don't want a whole city block full of rentals. I mean, the town I lived in downstate, it was quiet during the summer. There's no students there. The students were majority of the population. The town went quiet. I mean, Marquette, you don't really notice the students. You notice a little bit, but not much. But that town survived on the college. That was so a lot of the restaurants and establishments closed for the summer because there wasn't students in town. So that's the thing I can see that, you want to have neighborhoods. People don't have a problem with short-term rentals, but they worry about security and stuff like that. So that's like Commissioner Conley said, you know, it's things to think of, so I think whatever we decide is a good thing.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes, Taylor.
just so there's the legal aspect in terms of capabilities, the staff's worked on this longer than we have. I mean, we put a lot of hours in. Staff put a ton in. They burned through like 4 interns who just moved to Montana where there is no zoning because they don't want to see this stuff ever again. The software and the GIS mapping, all that stuff actually makes it reasonably easy to pick these houses out and track them. So this isn't going to add a lot to staff, and we know that staff's overburdened as it is, and they wouldn't have put something in place for us that would have said, hey, this is too much for us.
Thank you.
I move the question. We vote on it.
Okay. Commissioner Conley has made a motion to amend. We are going to vote on that motion. All those in favor of amending that motion, of the motion to amend, say yes.
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 Opposed, say no.
No.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Commissioner Cambenzi,
Yes.
Commissioner Conley,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier,
Yes.
Commissioner Plord,
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldini,
No.
Mayor Campana.
No. That motion carries 4-3. That means that we have limits per block.
That means the main motion stands and you need to vote on that now.
And now we need to vote on that.
Clarification. The main
Oh,
motion.
the motion was amended, I'm
The
sorry.
motion is amended
Yeah,
back to what is
yeah.
presented in the
Now
agenda.
we need to vote on it as amended. The amendment passed, is that what you said, Your Honor?
The amendment passed, yes, 4-3.
Okay, so we go back to the main motion as amended then.
Okay.
Voting on what was originally presented.
Yes, that's what I thought. The first time, the motion was to go back to the original motion as presented. That, was it not?
Yes.
Didn't you want the caps restored?
May I clarify? Pro Tem Baldini moved as presented with the caps deleted.
And you
in
moved to
summary,
bring the caps
I
back.
moved to amend to bring back the caps. So as it stands now, Pro Tem Baldini's motion to approve the ordinances, or the zoning ordinance, stands containing the caps.
Correct, so now we need a motion on the original.
There's a motion on the floor
Yeah,
that
there needs
has
to
been
be a
amended.
motion to approve that as
As amended.
As amended, right.
And that motion contains limits.
That contains limits, yes.
Okay. We're going to vote on that one. All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
We do need a roll call on this. Your Honor.
Let's do a roll call on that also.
Commissioner Cambenzi,
Can I ask for clarification? Did we, I felt like
It's a good point.
the amendment to the original motion is what we just voted on, correct?
And that passed.
May I, having amended the motion, the amendment that we approved restores it to what you see in front of you right now.
So I guess my question is, why do we have to vote on it again?
Because there wasn't a motion as it was presented to the commission. The first motion was to approve it with caps removed. That was amended. To put
The
caps back
removal
in.
of the cap was removed.
Right, so now we put the caps back in. There needs to be a motion to approve it as presented, with the caps in it, as it was originally presented.
Actually, there is a motion on the floor now.
Did someone make that motion?
Yes.
Yes.
That was original, which is
Okay.
what
That's right. There is a motion.
Which my
Yes.
motion amended.
Okay.
Amended,
So
yes.
we just need a roll call vote on that then. That'll put the caps back in.
That
If we-
was done.
All the language as it was originally presented is back in.
If we pass this motion that we're going to vote on with a roll call vote, that will establish the motion with caps. correct?
You know, this is where I was going with this before. The motion that Mr. Baldini made was to pass it without caps.
He tried to change it.
Right. Commissioner Conley moved to put the caps back in. The caps are back in. Now, there's a motion then to approve it. That's why I was saying, the original language of the ordinance, now we need to move to approve that ordinance as drafted. And then a roll call vote on that.
And if we pass it,
Then
it
it'll be
passes with limitations,
with the caps, yes.
with the caps.
Yep.
Commissioner Cambenzi.
Can I ask one more question? If one of us wants to put in a year annual review of this, does that require another motion?
Motion to amend. Because the original motion doesn't have it.
Go for it.
You could,
Go for it.
you could actually direct the city manager to review it in a year anyway. You don't
Let's do
even
that.
need it.
Let's do that. Keep
You
it
don't need
simple.
an ordinance.
All right, we're going to vote on the.
We need a motion.
We have the motion. The motion was made by Commissioner Baldini. Remember, he made this
I
originally.
made the original motion with.
We just
deleting
went
the
through this
caps.
discussion, though.
Pardon me?
We just went through this discussion.
Yes, so now we're voting on the original motion that is amended with Commissioner Conley's, and it's really this one, the original one, with caps.
Well, what Commissioner Conley's motion did was defeat your motion.
Was to take away my,
Was to defeat your motion.
yes.
So there's no motion on the floor. It
No,
defeated
no,
it.
he didn't defeat the motion, he amended my motion. I made a motion,
To
to
take the caps out.
take the caps out.
He made a motion to
He
put
made
them
a
back in.
motion, he amended my motion to put the caps back in.
All right, so if you
and it
want to go with
passed.
the motion as amended, that's fine. I would have done it differently.
Well, I know, I agree. It's a procedural nightmare. We kind of started with a negative and went to a
Right.
positive. But I believe that, and the city clerk may correct me on this, that Pro Tem Baldini's motion was to concur with the planning commission, and then he added removing the caps. I amended that phrase that removed the caps. So we're back to Baldini, Pro Tem Baldini's motion to concur with
As amended.
As
As
amended.
amended, yes.
Okay, then I'm good with that.
So, just to summarize, before I take a roll call, we're looking at a motion now amended, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Baldini, seconded by Commissioner Plord to concur with the Planning Commission recommendation and adopt ordinances 650 to 652 as presented.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Cambenzi,
Yes.
Commissioner Conley,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier,
Yes, make Conley happy.
Commissioner Plord,
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldini,
No.
Mayor Campana.
No. It does pass 4-3. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you. Jim Edwards? Next on the order is the second public hearing, but we're going to interrupt that to do a presentation that we didn't have a chance to get to. Apparently there's a time conflict and they didn't realize this. Yeah. Okay, so bear with us. We're going to have go back to the presentation, and tonight's presentation is going to be from the UP Children's Museum. We're honoring the Guardian of the Quarter, who is Bria Larson. And so if I could see Bria up at the podium along with Jim and perhaps the parents if they'd like or whatnot. This is Bria. Bria, it's a pleasure to meet you. Glad you're here. Parents, sister? Who's taking pictures? Grandma, okay, all right. Tonight we're honoring, find my place, we got put out of order here. Bria Larson. Bria is an outstanding young lady who helps out at the UP Children's Museum. There are many good things could be said about her, but for that I always leave it up to Jim Edwards, who is the director at the museum. Jim, if you could tell us a little about Bria and what she does here.
She's abrasive. She's cantankerous. She's the princess of after school. Comes to the museum, and I ask for things to happen, and Bria's the one that wants to get things done. So for years now, she's been coming down part-time at the museum as our guardian. Now you're a pixie, right? I'm a gnome. You see how it's going. Yes, our apologies for being late, but she also doesn't like to be kept waiting. So blame the British. It's always easy to blame the British. So after all that time, all right, the mayor's got a certificate for you.
Bria, the city is very proud of what you do for the city, the school, and the Children's Museum. We'd like to present you with a plaque. I'm going to read it here. It's the Youth Leadership Award presented to Bria Larson, the UP Children's Museum, Outstanding Guardian of the Quarter. So I'll give you this. Hopefully you treasure it, hang it on the wall, something to that effect. This, we always have a little prize gift from our chairman of the Sweet Treat Committee, which is Commissioner Sarah Reynolds. Thank you, Sarah. And it's clean. It's not healthy, but it's clean and ready to go. I want to thank you again very much. You did a good job. I'm sure you make your parents proud, and you'll continue to do so. Would you like to say a few words? Just a few thank you or something?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you again. Nope. Good job. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We probably needed that break. Okay, we're going to move on to our second public hearing of the evening, second and last. This public hearing is on Ordinance 653, repealing Chapter 26, Article 3 of the Marquette City Code and adopting a new Chapter 26, Article 3. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Yes, Your Honor, and before I read that, I wanted to note one of the attachments for this item, overcapacity fee resolution, had a minor change in the title. It changed from it had the word short-term rental in the title. It is not intended just for short-term rentals. That was amended. You all had that at the dais, and there are extra copies at the back table for the public. Background, the Planning Commission held a hearing on proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance that address short-term rentals at their November 1st, 2016 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended the City Commission adopt the amendments. The proposed changes to the zoning ordinance require amending the Rental Fire Safety Code. Fiscal effect none by this action. Recommendation, adopt ordinance number 653, which repeals Chapter 26, Article 3 of the Marquette City Code in its entirety, and adopt a new Chapter 26, Article 3, and adopt resolutions establishing fees for residential rental registrations and for short-term rental overcapacity violations. It is also recommended that staff conduct a 12-month review to address any potential concerns and/or changes. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Okay, we're going to open a public comment or public hearing on this. If anyone wishes to address the Commission on this particular item, now is your time. You got 3 minutes. Name, address, city or township. Does anyone wish to address us on this item?
Frank Jefferdo, 350 East Ridge, Marquette. These are my opinions. The proposed resolution shows the fee schedule at $175 for short-term and $110 for long-term rentals, assumed payable once every 3 years at the point of inspection. While the supplement states that processing residential rental registrations requires hours of staff time to complete, and that actual costs associated with these services are not subsidized by the general taxpayer, no apparent data is provided that breaks down how these fees were derived at. The inspection of my apartment consumed maybe 10 minutes, and the inspector probably toured many buildings in the neighborhood on that single trip to maximize efficiency. We realize that the inspection and the rental unit itself must be tracked with the aid of computers, but without an explanation, we'd assume that not much staff time is expended. Not that this is the case. We are guaranteed that the cost of these inspections will be passed on to renters, making it increasingly difficult for low-income residents to remain in Marquette. This board has heard endless allegations that Marquette is going to the rich. Obviously, fire inspections are critical to public safety. As a renter who will ultimately pay for his inspection times the number of renters within the city, it's only fair for us to receive an idea of what goes into the inspection process to rest assured that we're not being overcharged, just as we'd like to know in any other kind of business transaction.
Anyone else?
Nicole Young, Travel Marquette, 218 Arch in Marquette. First of all, I want to thank you for passing the previous legislation. This part of it with the fees, you know, we trust that you will pass appropriate fees for all aspects of it. We hope that the city will not short itself for gaining back what its investment is in order to maintain this program. And we just ask that you pass appropriate fees that make good sense, but also don't short the city in any way with the administration of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I am Sue Sholland, 975 Lakeshore Boulevard, Marquette, Michigan, and Nestle Down Bed and Breakfast owner. And I probably mentioned these things in that first public comment, but just again, thanks. And that planning commission, that is an incredible amount of work. They worked on this too, and it is complicated. And as a in the bed and breakfast industry, I get publications that, you know, are highlighting issues in other cities. And I'm glad that Marquette hasn't had any issues, but with the short-term rental, because it's sometimes just a different group of people, but just like our guests at the bed and breakfast, they're wonderful. So I don't know, maybe Marquette is attracting just really nice folks to town, and good that there hasn't been issues. But we appreciate the cap on how many, and mostly because I have had a concern just as a member of the community on the neighborhoods and how they are and how they look. And there is money to be made in a short-term rental. It is different. It is not renting your home, and it's not property tax. It's sales tax too. That do people pay sales tax on every transaction? I don't know that with a guest in town. And sales tax money goes to the state and Pure Michigan and things that attract people to to Michigan and for tourism. And sometimes I'm just not sure if that this new style of business under a radar is good for city, towns, state. It's different, you know, and it's just I wish the people that have a property, you have a business, you don't have a home any longer. It's truly a business, and I'm talking the short-term rental, not the homestay, but places that rent to the traveling public. And I appreciate Commissioner Conley's clarification on, you know, residents and visitors to the town. There is a difference. And so at Nestledown, we're hoping for a cap. We appreciate all the work and the ordinance that's out there. And I think there is room for everybody. But as we are functioning as a commercial property and business in the city of Marquette and invested, I think the short-term renter has to be asked to step up and be a business also. Or not the renter, the short-term rental owner. And follow whatever regulations are going to be set and made. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to address the commission? Anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we have a motion? Commissioner Conley.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 653, which repeals Chapter 26, Article 3 of the Marquette City Code in its entirety, and adopt a new Chapter 26, Article 3, and adopt resolutions establishing fees for residential rental registrations and for short-term rental overcapacity violations. It also recommends that staff conduct a 12-month review to address any potential concerns and/or changes.
Would there be a second, Commissioner Plort?
Second.
Comments, Commissioner Conley.
Well, this was the issue that got everybody started. It was our concern for fire safety. There have been tragedies in the UP with fire safety in other kinds of rentals, and we didn't want to see this happen in short term. That got the ball rolling over a year ago. Planning Commission worked really hard to bring us this. Chief Davis and his staff have brought us some changes in this that will make all of our rentals safer. So I would like to go ahead with it. This resolution, I would point out, does have a cap of 250 short-term registrations as part of it. To address a couple of things that were stated in public comment, we're not allowed to charge fees to make money on this. I wish we could. The state does not allow us to charge more than our costs. We have to figure out what it costs to enforce this. But because of, technically it's the Bolt decision and its subsequent decisions that interpret the Headley amendment, the city can't make money on any kind of fees, whether it's stormwater or short-term rentals or whatever. I wish we could. We'd be setting fees and taxes. We also can't tax. We're not allowed to. State law only allows certain very large cities to levy hotel taxes. We'd like to get that changed. Instead, we get House Bill 4503 that limits our ability to rule our own home area. And we don't have any position to enforce state tax law. I wish we could. I'm a state taxpayer too. I want everybody to pay their taxes. But it's not up to us to go around and audit everybody and enforce the payment of use tax. In an ideal world, maybe we could, but I don't think we'd get away with it. At least we wouldn't get very much farther than either the district or the circuit court. So that said, there was an email that was sent to us about 2 weeks ago from a city resident that had some ideas and about the application for short-term rentals. And I had asked the city manager to look at this and wonder, Chief Davis is going to address these. Chief, I'm assuming you've seen that email that I'm referring to?
Yes.
And if you could give me your comments and your input as to some of the concerns that were raised in this.
Yeah, as you already spoke to, the first one was the state tax ID number. Again, pointing towards the use tax. Honestly, I'll put it in there, but like you said, we're not a state agency. So I don't know whether we need to be asking people for their state ID number on that. I'm open to it, but I don't know that, like you said, I don't know that that's our place to do. The second one was a copy of their liability insurance. Again, commission's discretion. I can ask for it. The problem is that we use the same application for short-term and long-term rentals. We would have to then split that out and have separate application forms, which wouldn't be a huge deal, but it is going to take some staff time to deal with separate application forms, and would also incrementally, just very small increase in fees because of that time. Let's see, the platforms that they're listed on, the websites, I don't think we're going to need that just because we are going to have access to that data mined information from the software that we'll be purchasing. So I think that's kind of a moot point on that one. Emergency contact numbers, local contact numbers if they're out of town. We do already have, if the landlord, whether it's long-term or short-term, if the landlord lives outside of Marquette County, they have to have a local operator named with contact information. So that's already in there. Let's see, parking plan, that's already in there. And also, where they're talking about tax assessments and whether people have paid their taxes, again, that's already in there. Going back to the public comment, there was a little bit of a misunderstanding, I think, on the fees for the registration. These are one-time fees for registration. They're not the every 3 years on the inspection. Those are actually billed at $63 an hour. It's a completely separate fee. We did break it down. It goes to, there's work done by the fire department. It then goes to the zoning department and also the finance department and then back to us again. We broke that down completely as to how much time we spend and each person spends on it. And then we rounded down to the nearest whole number to make it easy. That's how we got to that. And basically the difference between the two, 110 for the long-term registrations, 175 for the short-term registrations. The difference is the amount of time that the zoning department has to deal with the mapping for the proximities, and also for the price for the compliance software. That's only going to be used on the short-term rentals. That's the difference, the $65 difference in that fee. But we did figure that to the penny as to what it's costing us.
Thank you for your input. I just wanted those questions addressed. I'm not proposing that we include anything more than you've already included in what looks like a well-done fire safety code and application process. So, but those were questions that were raised by the public and wanted to see them addressed. I personally, I think that folks should have liability insurance, whether they live in a single-family residence or they're renting their home out. But I don't know that it is our place to enforce that. So I guess I'm not going to ask that we put anything like that in the application. So thank you for answering my questions, and you've done that well. Thank you.
Commissioner Plort.
I'd also like to address public comment. Thank you, Mr. Verito, for very clear and concise public comments and requesting absolutely a reasonable request. Thank you, Chief, for answering that for us. We appreciate that. I knew there was an answer somewhere, but to be honest, I didn't know where it was either. But I had a feeling that if I came to you, you'd be able to give it to me. So I appreciate that. Yeah, it's we are moving forward with it, and I think that's what we need to do.
Commissioner Cambenzi.
Well, this is the reason, the main reason I see us dealing with this entire subject altogether. I do have a few questions. The Bolt versus Lansing case, very famous case for city commissioners, elected officials. But if I could ask Nicole Young just a few questions about the taxes that hotels pay. What's that? Or is it a fee, I guess, and is it in fact in our Constitution?
Sure. So
who collects it?
Years ago, in the mid-'80s, a law was passed that allowed local communities and regions to band together to collect an assessment from tourists, which would then pay to fund a destination marketing organization, which is what Travel Marquette is. So the hotels voted in Marquette County to include all hotels with 10 units and up as part of the required assessment unit. And they collect 5% on the room rates from each tourist. And then those are all paid into a central pool, which then is the budget for Travel Marquette.
I mean, as we work through this and not turning a blind eye or an ear to the hotel industry or a bed and breakfast or anything like that, maybe this is a way that we can help lobby to, put a similar fee on short-term rentals at the state level that comes back to municipalities to be used on things like that. I mean, something to level the playing field other than what we can or cannot do as a local body I think is the way maybe to go about this.
So the general, kind of the general consensus in the lodging industry is that Airbnb is a very dangerous character to work with. They don't want to reveal their income. They don't want to audit. They don't want to be audited. So in order for them to participate in our collection, they would have to reveal their state sales tax that's being paid by each of their individual Airbnb units, and then they would have to contribute the 5% based on that. They won't do that, and so some cities have cut a deal with them, which they blindly accept a negotiated amount to consider a tax that makes them feel better. However, it's not an actual, it's not based on any actual information. It's very nefarious, and our feeling at Travel Marquette is that we would not want to deal with an entity such as Airbnb. However, we will have to, if they choose to, if an Airbnb owner, individual, would want to join the CVB and then collect that 5% assessment and pay into the destination marketing organization, we can't prevent them from doing that. They would be allowed to do that and then take advantage of all the benefits that our organization provides to its members.
And maybe that fee doesn't go to you. Maybe it's more of a local thing that the city commission can work with or something. But to level the playing field, I guess that's still in the back of my head, where I kind of want to see more justice done. And I'm not.
And I think that's where the business license came in. So we were talking about in previous conversations, if you're a daycare, you have to get a Michigan or City Marquette license to operate. And in this case, Sue and I would both consider these individual entities as one unit hotels, which would then qualify to have to purchase a business license in order to operate in a residential area as a commercial unit. So that's where we were looking at. That would be a place where you would be able to do something like that and avoid the state altogether, and still, level that playing field and benefit as the city.
Well, I think as we work through this, I can't speak for everyone up here, but I think we're all sensitive to how this is going to play into affecting the hotels and the bed and breakfast. So we do have lobbyists at the Michigan Municipal League looking at this, certainly with what our legislators have presented. But I think, I'd hate to see our control over local zoning go away if there's a better way to level the playing field. And I guess that's where I'd like to see us go in the next year, working with our professional organization as well as other cities to say, how can we make this fair and equitable? Because I hope you don't leave here tonight thinking that we're not paying attention to the hotels that invest a large amount of money.
Thank you so much for everything you did tonight. We appreciate that. Also, there are a lot of groups that are working for the very same thing to help get the municipalities more money from the state for that very item. And we will continue to work on that as well.
Thanks.
Commissioner Reynolds.
Well, I'm not going to change how I feel about this suddenly, but I do have a question for you, Ian. Just as far as the violation of $1,000 per violation, if someone, how does this happen? Like, do you contact them by letter, phone, that kind of stuff, and then people that aren't coming forward to register, that's when they get the violation? If we enact this evening, I don't want something to, not that it's going to happen that way, but I'm just curious how
This violation that's part of the second resolution has nothing to do with registration. It only has to do with overcapacity.
Gotcha.
Commissioner Baldini.
The question of the tax, I had asked Ron Keefe, our attorney, if we could impose that fee. And he said he didn't think so. I said, well, why don't we do it and then have the state tell us we can't? But he's one of those legal people, and he didn't want me to get in trouble or get us in trouble. But I wonder, with the discussion in Lansing with putting no caps on the Airbnbs, if the legislature will use this as an opportunity to broaden the discussion. I agree that the big communities, New York, San Francisco, the reading I've done, they have cut deals with Airbnb. They negotiated, and they've negotiated a tax collection and things of that nature. And they put it on the bill because the money goes to Airbnb. They collect it, and they do collect, I think, the 6% sales tax, Michigan sales tax. So that's there. And also, thank you for clarifying that this is a fee initially to sign up, and then you get a 3-year permit, correct?
No, the registration is one time only unless it changes ownership.
Well, the registration is, but once I register my short-term rental,
Once it's inspected.
Pardon me?
There's a registration certificate that they get.
Yes.
And then once they actually go through the compliance inspection, they get a compliance certificate. Once they have that, it's good for 3 years.
it's good for 3 years. Yeah,
Correct.
okay, yeah, all right. It's like long-term, okay, yeah.
Yes.
And this is the one where I think Commissioner Cambenzi said that we got all started on this one, the safety, the fire. And I am concerned about how our fees are beginning to creep, and really the amount of regulation. Airbnbs aren't going away, okay? They're here to stay. And I know some of the other interests in the cities don't like that, but it's now become the largest hotel theoretically in the world. It's one of those false numbers, but it is in terms of the things they have. So I think we're going to be revisiting this again. And I think the motion that Commissioner Conley made says a 12-month review, so it'll come back at some point for us. So thank you.
My feeling on this is that, again, I do not like that there is a cap in there. I don't agree with caps. Again, it's a regulation that, to me, is unneeded and unenforceable. But I do want this motion to pass because it deals with registration and inspection. So I'm probably going to vote yes on this, but I don't like the cap limit on it. Commissioner Conley, you had something?
The proposal and the motion is about amending the fire code. We've allowed ourselves to range widely about fees and taxes and that, but really when we call the question, it is, do we want to amend the fire code? We all have feelings about taxing these, and I feel as strongly as anyone else here that I wish the legislature allowed this, but that we're getting right down to the heart of it, which was the start of it, and that's fire safety.
Question?
Commissioner Frazier.
I'm all about fire safety. Commissioner Ian does a great job, and other commissioners agree. Fire safety, but I agree with Commissioner Belding. We got to be careful. Our fees are creeping up for everything. We don't want to, not let people stay in our community because the fees are too high about something. I know B&B is just the new wave of future. It might be a phase, just like the food truck thing just came into town, and all the restaurants were upset about the food trucks, but they seem to get over it. And I mean, we have a lot of hotels in our community, not just in the city, in the community, and they're building them. Seems like they just built a new hotel recently, so I don't think the B&Bs are really hurting them that bad. I know they're saying they're hurting them, but I mean, I think the hotels are doing okay. But I mean, B&B is just something people like to look at. I mean, I know people that go out of town that look for B&Bs. Some people, I look at hotels because it's just my comfort level. Some people like B&B. It's like a house, depending on where you're going. So I think it's the wave of the future. It's going to happen, like Commissioner Baldi said. They're not going away. It's going to be the new future, and I agree with the fire safety. I'm about fire safety. We're just not crazy about creeping fees up. I asked the city manager about, do we can reduce the people looking at it? He said, we have like 6 departments looking at it, and I said, oh boy. So no problems with fire code, but I'm just not crazy about raising fees again.
I'd like to call a question. Can we have a roll call vote?
Yes, Your Honor. Commissioner Cambenzi?
Yes.
Commissioner Conley?
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier?
No.
Commissioner Plord?
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldini?
Yes.
And Mayor Campana?
Yes. Passes 5-2. Next, we move to the first public comment of the evening. Public comment is a time when citizens may address the commission. They may also reserve time to speak on an item coming up in new business. I'm going to open public comment. We allow you 3 minutes. We need name, address, home address, city or township. Would anyone care to address the commission?
Hello, I'm Jim Toms. I'm the Director of Facilities and Campus Planning at NMU, and there's 2 items on the agenda that I'd like to show support for and make myself available for. That would be 9 and 11. So.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matt Ludenberger, 1406 Garfield Ave here in Marquette, Michigan. I come up because the web feed for tonight's meeting is offline. So I was hoping that at least the comments would be recorded for future reference, like the work session was for the short-term rentals. Once that finally made it online, thank you. It offered a lot more insight as to what we should expect tonight. But I'm curious as to where to go for technical responses in the process of doing this. You know, I don't have cable, so I don't know if it's actually fed on our charter channel, but I look forward to seeing this in the next couple of days. I can't stick around, but I'd like to say on the final items of the night, they all regard different property locations and different roads in town. I've mentioned this before, but please, could we get maps? And I came in and saw the different maps that we have up in the lobby, and I saw kind of what we were talking about. But when you talk about personal property that you're going to acquire for city purposes, it seems helpful for all intents and purposes to not just give a address of 509 7th Street or something, but to actually give a physical output of what we plan on both removing and how we plan on reconfiguring what's there. Once we take property from the city or from any entity, the city has to draw new maps and draw new plot lines and things like that. It would be helpful if those were available in both either the agenda items or in general just online on our website. So that's the last concern I have is our website seems to be very, there's a term used in the field, outdated. I don't like that field or that term, but it seems cluttered. It seems like we've been putting a lot of things together without redesigning or refiguring or reassessing how we assess our website. So it seems kind of confusing. If you could please take a look at that. I don't know how that fits in, but if you could also include maps, that'd be appreciated. Finally, I'd like to say that the last time I came up here, I gave a wrong number on a monthly slip fee for our marinas, and I'm very sorry if I misled anybody. I appreciate being corrected. I was concerned, however, that the correction came from the audience and not an actual member of our staff. So I was wondering if you could help me and if there is an actual number for the monthly fees that we are looking to increase for the Presque Isle Marina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank Jeff Verito to speak on item 10. These are my opinions. April 24th, this board handled the Cliffs Dow item superbly. My apologies for underquoting the $12,000 per acre offer at $1,200. I made sure to apologize to the appellants. However, the price was written correctly on my script, meaning everything I said applied to the $12,000 per acre. What I cannot apologize for were my accusations that we'd have reason to believe that this board would rush to another premature decision and rush a decision on an important parcel without adequate public notice or process. This presumption has occurred before, rarely, and likely will again, that I will accuse this board prior to its discourse, knowing that I'll occasionally be wrong, that is to blame them for mishandling an item that they end up performing well on. Our history of deceit and deciding based upon who's who necessitates this tactic. If there's a soul in town with a solution, I'm all ears. Otherwise, it's more important to derive at the best land use than I falsely accuse this board in those rare cases. It only became clear at meeting time that the proponents were not whose, or the result may have been different. To expound on those April 24th comments, I've always advocated raising and rerouting the road through Cliffsdown to create green space and a trail to the east overlooking Lake Superior. Years ago, when this board finally realized how impractical their ill-advised 26-unit office park was, 5 properties were proposed along the west border, only one of which is occupied. The appellants told me they planned to place their housing units on the west half to allow the residents green space and lake views to the east. Let us first determine the best road alignment in terms of aesthetics and traffic flow, then ascertain what, if any, parts of that parcel are saleable. Sell only what's needed for any buildings so we maintain control over the green acres. This assures us that the realignment will be compatible with the buffer and development to the west. April 24th, yet another example arose as to how Mr. Campana governs by who's who. He asked that no first names be used in public comment, yet at the 1 hour, 54 minute, 35 second mark, Ms. Reynolds referred to 2 members by their first names and wasn't called on it. Also of note is that I'd used Mr. and Ms. on first mention, first names only after that, solely to save time, never out of disrespect. Ms. Reynolds did nothing wrong, similarly to the man who was allowed to speak past his 3 minutes multiple times on April 10th. Our issue continues to be Mr. Campana's alleged failure to treat participants fairly and to not properly entertain due public process, which will lead right into my closing comment on the fiasco at South Beach. How can Mr. Plord observe that damage objectively and say I'm criticizing just to criticize? While this isn't the worst case we've seen, our recreational community is warned that Mr. Campana has threatened to ruin the Founders Woods and overcompromise Heartwood. That is to sacrifice our rare long-term opportunity for the short-term gains of few. Residents who appreciate nature are implored to make their feelings known.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Your Malankin 8 Marquette Drive here in the city of Marquette. I'm going to put on my landfill authority hat on this evening as a vice chair, and I strongly urge you to take on the consent agenda the item 8M off of there on the Articles of Incorporation. And for that reason, I'm going to, and 3 minutes is a really short time trying to explain it to you, we as a 7-member board, our intelligent board, in 2014, we took the county as a municipal hauler out by their request, not as a county itself. People misunderstand completely. It was at their request. This has become a political football, and if in fact you people decide to leave that in there, you are overriding the 2 representatives that you have on the landfill authority, as well as at large, who is a city representative. It was a unanimous decision to do that in 2014. Unfortunately, it has become a political football, and it should not be. This slippery slope if you do that and reverse all of our decision on this. Sands Township is attempting to take control of this whole landfill authority. You, as a city, are the largest municipal holder of this entity. In the pie chart, Sands is just a sliver here. We pay $1 a ton, over $2 million we have paid the Sands to have the privilege of having the landfill in their municipality. They also get a chair out of this whole thing. I get to be the vice chair, but they get a chair for 4 years indefinitely. It never changes. They have incredible amount of control. So if you leave this on the consent agenda, you are overriding the 2 individuals that you have appointed, and you have told them basically that they have done a wrong decision, and the person at large. We have gone through many attorneys, including the Attorney General, who said we did nothing wrong as a 7-member board. And of course, this has the appeals process, and so Sands Township and Darlene Welch is going through the appeals process. And in order for them to get their way, it has to be a unanimous decision by all 22 municipalities. The county never was a municipality. They were just a facilitator to put the counties together, because there were 22 counties that did not agree, including Sands and Marquette. And so the county always has been a facilitator, not a hauling participant, and that's what they wanted to be out of there, and we granted them that decision. And Unfortunately, like I said, it's become a political football, and my time is starting to run out. So please, please take item 8M out and not reverse the decision of the members that you have put up to represent you as a city on the landfill authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Nicole Young, 218 Arch Street. Just wanted to share with you one of the items that came up earlier was maybe not a really good overall feel about kayaks in the harbor. And I just wanted to share with you that the Lake Superior Kayak Company, we worked with them last year, and we're really pleased with them. They gave us, they gave Travel Marquette staff a tour around Presque Isle, and it was amazing. And if you haven't been on a kayak tour around Presque Isle, you need to do it. There's this thing on the island, it's called the Eye of the Island, and it's this rock formation that's really incredible. These are things that we use to attract tourists to our area so that we can fill those Airbnbs and those campgrounds and those hotels that we've got here. If we're limiting the ability of people to get access to the lake and get on the water, I think we're really hurting ourselves. Right now, they have to go to Munising to enjoy Lake Superior. I would like to keep that here. I think it's in our best interest to keep it simple for people to access that lake. With new flights in from Minneapolis, Detroit, these are things, people can't bring a kayak with them, so we need to keep that rental available and open to them. So I'm just expressing my support for that and hope you will agree.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to address the commission? Anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment. We're going to move to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Frazier.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Is there a second? Do we have a second? Commissioner Conley.
I'll second.
Any comments? Commissioner Cambenzi, you have a comment?
Well, I guess I'd just like to ask staff if they could give an overview of the item number 8M, just for clarification.
It's a long story, but I'll try to shorten it up as much as I can. A while back, the county was removed as a participating agency or participating municipality within the Solid Waste Management Authority. And that created a whole discussion internally, but more recently, well, I'll go back a step. At that time, the city had no position one way or another, because honestly, I can find no reason to support one side or another. But at the time, our two representatives on the board voted to support their removal, and we supported them. Most recently, at a Marquette County Board of Commissioners meeting, the Marquette County Board asked to be reinstated as a constituent member on the Marquette County Solid Waste Management intergovernmental agreement, and to retain all previous conditions and status remaining as agreed in the previous agreements. Now, at that time, that was an action by Marquette County. Again, the city took no position. However, at the April 19th, 2017 Authority Board meeting, the board took action with an amendment to the Articles of Incorporation necessary to reinstate Marquette County as a constituent. In other words, they were asking us if we had an opinion if they were back as a constituent, and or in other words, asking us if we supported them coming back. And our position was, my position was, along with the city attorney, that yes. I mean, we have no position either way. I mean, if you want them back on, we'll support you back on. If you want them off, we'll support you off. So the last information we received from the our representatives on the Solid Waste Management Authority was they were supporting the motion to bring the county back on, so we're just offering support through this action today for that. It requires 3/4 concurrence with the constituent municipalities to allow them back.
Can I just ask if it's common to have, I guess, the county's part of it? I know that, I guess it'd be Escanaba has a landfill authority.
Well, it's common in some respect. The county was a constituent municipality in the beginning because they were responsible for building the road to the landfill. They do not haul garbage, so to speak, like all the other municipalities do. So they don't have that, that objective in what they do. Depending on how you read the bylaws and the articles of incorporation, there's all kinds of different interpretation as to whether or not they should or should not be a constituent member. And I really tried not to bring you down this road, but there's no impact either way as far as we can see whether they are a constituent or not a constituent. In this regard, the county's asked to be placed back on. It appears the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority agreed to ask the question if they should be back on, and we are just supporting that to try to put this to an end, finally. Does that make sense, Ron?
So they will just receive a voting chair, a voting
Well,
position?
yeah, part of the, thank you, you reminded me, part of the reason the county is on, and part of the problem that was occurring was that the city of Marquette appoints 2 members to the board. The county appoints 3. And theoretically, those appointees are supposed to be throughout the county and represent different factions of the county. In other words, not every municipality or township has the authority to appoint somebody, but the county does to represent them. Historically, they've had a difficult time doing that. They've had a difficult time finding members from throughout the county to fill the roles for the county appointments. Yorma was an appointment, for example, as a county representative. Part of this agreement, it's my understanding, is that if the county gets back on the board or on the council, they will in fact represent more of the county outside the city or other municipalities that appoint members. Does that make sense? Kind of.
Well, I mean, it just.
Well,
Is there any negative?
there is no negative, that's the thing. Just to correct, we supported our representatives on the solid waste when they wanted the county has to come off, and they approved that.
Right.
We supported that, that's not a problem. But there were some who wanted the county back in. We had no problem with that. The county asked to come back in as a result of that request. We've asked to, we don't have really a dog in this fight. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't affect anything. But we have supported our board. I mean, that's the important thing. And I think the county originally drafted this agreement, and I think there is confusion in the agreement as to what their role is, but they're in agreement probably not only because they drafted it, but for what Mike said also, the 19 townships need a voice, and the county is in a position to rotate that membership. We get our own, and I think maybe the other cities might get their own, but I mean, they're in a position to rotate the membership, and they're in the best position to make those appointments. So that's why it was done, I'm sure. But we don't have a problem with them being in or out. When they wanted out, we said fine. When they wanted back in, we said fine, as far as the staff was concerned.
And if I'm understanding what Mr. Lincoln is concerned about is perhaps the percentage of money that we pay towards it, maybe this makes our vote more uneven? Is that? Well,
we should be able to answer that. county gets no financial incentive out of this.
No.
Right.
No, there's no, and the fact that we are the largest user really doesn't mean anything. I mean, we're all in this as a board. We have our appointees, the county has their appointees, Sands has a position, I don't know, there may be a couple others. But that doesn't affect whether this county's in or out. They're still gonna make their appointments.
Mr. Lanklin, I appreciate that you have strong feelings on this, and I know we went back and forth on this. To me, the fact that the county board asked to get back in tells me they want in. That's their desire. As they come in, they don't haul garbage, but they maintain the road and they select representatives, I believe is all they do. So it's pretty harmless. They're not affecting anything. So if they want in, it's harmless. So I would have to agree with this. Any, City Manager.
Just not to drag this out, but they asked to be out too. So wishy-washy this is. And we supported them when they wanted to get out. Then they asked to come back in.
Okay. The latest is in, though.
The latest is in, so we're just trying to be good neighbors.
Okay, this is because there's resolutions in the consent agenda. We need a roll call vote. City Clerk.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Cambenzi,
Yes.
Commissioner Conley,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier,
Yes.
Commissioner Plord,
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldini,
Yes.
and Mayor Campana.
Yes. Passes 7-0. Tonight, under new business, we have 4 items. First item is property acquisition from Northern Michigan University. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, sir. At its meeting on August 8th, 2016, the City Commission approved the 6-year capital improvements plan for 2017 to 2022, which included a Wright Street reconstruction project and a Presque Isle Avenue reconstruction project. The Wright Street reconstruction project proposal includes replacing the signalized intersection of Wright Street and Sugarloaf Avenue with a roundabout, as well as upgrading the intersection of Wright Street and Lincoln Avenue to a roundabout, as recommended in the Lundin Truck Corridor Study. The Presque Isle Avenue reconstruction project proposal includes upgrading the intersection of Presque Isle and Fair Avenues with a roundabout, as recommended in the City of Marquette Traffic Study. In order to construct roundabouts at these locations, additional right-of-way must be acquired by the city. As a result, city staff has reached an agreement with Northern Michigan University for the transfer of the needed right-of-way property, and the city attorney has prepared the attached purchase agreement for commission approval. Fiscal effect, none with this action. Recommendation, approve the property acquisition for additional right-of-way from Northern Michigan University per the terms of the purchase agreement. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Mr. Thom, you're available to give us information. You did not wish to address us on this, did you?
Well, I'm happy to address the commission, and you had these 2 items on the agenda, both the property acquisition as well as the roundabouts themselves. And my intent was really to kind of come in and show support for both. We've worked with city staff over the last 2 years on a couple of projects, this being one of them. And the property acquisition and ultimately the roundabout really do help a lot of tough intersections around campus. The roundabouts themselves will help with loading and unloading at campus. We got a tough intersection at Wright Street and Sugarloaf. It's tough for a lot of our students who are trying to cross that intersection. This roundabout will provide, it'll provide an easier means, so to speak, for students to get across the street. Now they have to cross essentially 1 lane of traffic where they can get to a safe island and then cross onto the second lane of traffic. So, we've worked with city staff. You have this property acquisition in front of you. We see this as an important thing, and as such, we're not asking for any consideration for this. We do think it's a good for both the city and the university. So, am I prepared to say anything? Or I just did.
Thank you.
And I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Yep.
We'll call you back up if we need more. Commissioners, do we have a motion? Commissioner Plort?
I move that we approve the property acquisition for additional right-of-way from Northern Michigan University per the terms of the purchase agreement.
Second. Commissioner Frazier.
Second.
Is there any comment? Commissioner Plort, any?
Just go along with what was said already. You know, this is we've looked at this for a long time, and again, the roundabouts, all the comment that I've had from members of the public as far as these roundabouts are concerned is all positive. It's something we just need to do.
Commissioner Frazier?
Is there a record for the number of roundabouts in Wood City, Mike? Are we going to hold the record for the number of roundabouts in Wood City, maybe?
Yes. Commissioner Cambenzi?
Can I ask, this does have to do with the property for Fair in Presque Isle as well?
Yes, it does.
Any other comment?
Down there.
Commissioner Cambenzi?
I guess my questions relate more to item number 11, in which there is one roundabout, I guess it's the Presque Isle Fair Avenue one, that I've heard more negative comments about, not necessarily about roundabouts, but more so, you know, we don't know what's going to happen to the old hospital. If you're looking to take out, you know, traffic signals, why don't you put 2 roundabouts maybe on College and Magnetic? Why don't you put a roundabout at the end of 3rd Street? That's where you can't get out of. Most people feel that the Fair and Presque Isle intersection really isn't a problem. So I guess, while I do support the Wright Street roundabouts, at this point, I think it'd be wise to get a little more community input and public input on how they feel a roundabout, I guess, would be useful or not at that intersection. I think there's a lot of people out there that are kind of wondering why there. And I think there's a lot of people that are wondering if we're doing it just for Northern or if we're actually wanting to do it to make the most sense to move traffic on 3rd Street or take out the stoplights at Magnetic and College. So I'm not sold on that one. If the record could show that I do support the Wright Street property acquisition, but currently until there's more community discussion, I guess I can't support the one at Presque Isle and Fair Avenue.
I would say, City Manager, we have good reasons for these roundabouts. I know you could give us a short version of why. We're talking Presque Isle and Fair.
Yes.
The recent information that you passed on to us.
Well, yeah, this, I'm going to ask Dennis to help me out if I leave some parts out, but as short as I can relate, this project goes back several years, and when you're talking about Presque Isle and Fair, we're talking mainly about repairing and replacing both infrastructure and street for Presque Isle from Fair Street to Wright Street. So through the capital improvement plan, we put into place steps over the years through the budget to repair Presque Isle with that intersection, and approved through the budget the first phase of that project for this year, which would be the intersection of Presque Isle and Fair. Again, a large focus of what we are trying to accomplish is the infrastructure repair. We have very old infrastructure, and by infrastructure I mean water and sewer and storm sewer and that kind of thing. So whether we put a roundabout there or a signalized intersection, it doesn't matter. We still have to do that infrastructure. Then you take into account the traffic study, which we did citywide, and that study recommended a short-term, cheapest way to go is a traffic signal, but they did not recommend a traffic signal, and they said overall a roundabout would be the best solution for that intersection. So we didn't just pull it out of the air. And then to take it a step further, there's more dovetailing going on here. Through our Johnson Control program, where we are looking at replacing and repairing and/or repairing stop and go lights, by putting in a roundabout at this intersection, it allows us to remove the stop and go light at K and 4th Street, or K and Presque Isle. So if you follow me here, we were able to save $150,000 on that intersection alone at K and Presque Isle. By not putting a light in at the intersection of Fair and Presque Isle, we can save another $150,000, or it would cost us another $150,000 to put that light in. So the bottom line is, whether we put a roundabout in or lights, we're still going to spend the same amount of money, roughly. Are you following me so far? Okay. So what we're trying to do is put the street back and repaired, and put the best possible traffic control device we can back there for the long term, and that would be a roundabout. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we've needed additional property to do that, because roundabouts take extra property. The university has graciously given us a large amount of property at those three intersections: Presque Isle and Fair, Sugarloaf and Wright, Lincoln and Wright. We've also had to get property from private property owners at Lincoln and Wright and Sugarloaf and Wright, as well as the Armory, the National Guard, at Lincoln and Wright. So this has been a long process. We still have one piece of private property that needs to be obtained at the Fair and Presque Isle intersection, and we are working towards that end. We hope to have that property in some level of progress or secure position within the next few weeks.
The part about that's hard to believe is that a light at the intersection costs $150,000. That's hard to believe.
Yeah,
and then you have legacy costs beyond that.
Yeah, they are a expensive startup, and they're expensive to maintain over time. And when you compare their long-term costs against the initial cost of a roundabout, there's really no savings.
Commissioner Frazier?
I agree with all the construction on Wright Street. That's a good idea. All the roundabouts will be that's a busy street, and I agree with that. Like Commissioner Kamenzi said, I'm a little iffy on that one other roundabout the city may want to put in by Northern. I read the review. I looked at what the DOZ recommended, and it looked kind of complicated compared to what a normal roundabout would be. I think I agree with fixing the street. If we could pass the recommendation to fix the street, that's fine with me. I mean, at least get everything updated, and then look at maybe down the line whether to put roundabouts, some signals, some traffic stop signs, whatever. But we could look at that down. I agree with fixing the street, get things moving, and then we could look at maybe when the hospital does close in the next 2 or 3 years, maybe traffic will cut down. Maybe Northern traffic will pick up at that intersection. We don't really know. So maybe we could fix the street and then look at upgrading the intersection down the line.
Commissioner Kamenzi?
Just one final comment, and I guess I won't say it in 11, I'll say it in item 9 here. I guess pulling from the traffic study that DLZ originally did, Presque Isle Avenue and Fair Avenue intersection, ID number 16. This intersection has a heavy westbound to southbound left turn volume, which is the stop controlled movement. Installation of a traffic signal would be the most cost-effective way to address this. However, a traffic signal is not warranted since the volume of right-turning vehicles from the side street was reduced based on the guidance described above. So here we spend $150,000 on a traffic study, and it's telling us that that intersection really doesn't warrant even a traffic signal, let alone a roundabout. So what I'm hearing people say is that why put one there when really roundabouts near there would actually help move traffic probably a lot better. And I have to say, I agree with them based on not only the traffic study, but also what's going to become of the hospital. And maybe the traffic lights on McClellan and College, to take those out and save that money and put roundabouts in, makes sense. But I feel like this intersection is not, it's not making sense, not only to me, but I think a lot of community members out there. So I guess if I could just have the record show for that reason on 9 and 11 why I'm voting no, that's good.
Like to call a question? All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1. And City Clerk, you made all the notations that you were asked to make.
Yes, sir.
Good job. We now move to the second item of new business, which is the purchase of property from Daniel Croney and Christine Hillman. City Clerk, could you please give us the background on this?
Thank you, sir. As a result of the preferred alternative being chosen for the proposed transportation system improvements related to the relocation of the former Marquette General Hospital, various properties or portions thereof were identified as needing to be acquired for the project. City staff has reached an agreement with Daniel Croney and Christine Hillman for the purchase of their property at 522 South 7th Street, and the city attorney has prepared the attached purchase agreement for commission approval. Fiscal effect: an agreed-upon cash payment of $152,500 will be made and funded through the Brownfield Plan for the DLP Marquette General Replacement Hospital. This plan was approved by the Marquette City Commission on October 27, 2014. Funds for this project were obligated in the plan for this project. Recommendation: approve the purchase of property at 522 South 7th Street from Daniel Croney and Christine Hillman per the terms of the purchase agreement. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Mr. Verito, you wish to address us?
Frank Jeff Verito. These opinions apply to both items 10 and 12 to save time. Incidentally, it's odd that a completely unrelated item 11 is placed between these two seemingly related items. Because I recommended the former West Rail Yard for a new hospital, it wouldn't be prudent for me to oppose our purchase of these properties. However, item 12 looks to amount to a taking. You may wish to explain that for us, please. As we've documented too many times before, the absence of a depiction makes it impossible to comment effectively. None is provided in the agenda packet for either property. We obviously deserve to examine the parcels in relation to the hospital site to ascertain whether there's an alternative, to understand and determine why the parcels are needed, and to obtain an honest idea of what the property owners are giving up for the mentioned purchase prices. The problem is we simply don't know, and because we've documented this problem in receiving depictions so many times with no improvement, it's feared something may be being hidden from us. No one could accidentally forget this many times. You recall me alleging that this board doesn't need depictions because depictions are based on who's who, not on land use variables. The Commission is asked again to realize the importance of presenting adequate depictions for the members as well as the public. Mr. Plord accused me of not telling this board what I want. How many times in his presence have I asked, please, for a decent depiction?
Commissioners, do we have a motion? Commissioner Plord.
I move that we approve the purchase of the property at 522 South 7th Street from Daniel Croney and Christine Hillman per the terms of the purchase agreement.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Conley.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Commissioner Plord, anything?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd just like to say I don't disagree with Mr. Verito on as far as having information out there, but I'm not sure what he's going to do with it. This is business between Daniel Croney and Christine Hillman and the city. And I would guess that even if he didn't like what the city was going to do, there's really not much that can be done about it. Again, this is business between Christine Hillman and Daniel Croney. I agree that information should be out there, absolutely, but again, I think it's out there. It just needs to be found. This is, again, part of the process of ongoing construction on what we're doing as the city moves along.
Commissioner Connolly, anything? We're going to, Commissioner Cambenzi?
Well, just for the record, I will be voting no on this one as well. This stems back from the original agreement with the hospital, as well as the planning stages that we worked through this neighborhood in order to accommodate the hospital. And I still stand strongly that we didn't do enough for this neighborhood. The widening of 7th Street to put in a turning lane to go to the new hospital after they received a roundabout right in front of their hospital, not that far away from the Grove Street roundabout. This is one effect of that. And I guess, what's coming up on number 12, I guess it's just unfortunate. But with respect to why I'm voting no, that's why.
Okay, we're going to take it to. We're going to call the question. All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1. We come to our third new business item of the evening. It is the Presque Isle Avenue and Wright Street Reconstruction Project. City Clerk, could you give us the background, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. The Presque Isle Avenue and Wright Street reconstruction projects include roadway construction on Presque Isle Avenue from College to Fair Avenue and Wright Street from Industrial Parkway to Sugarloaf Avenue. The projects include roundabouts at the intersections of Wright and Lincoln Avenue, Wright and Sugarloaf Avenue, and Presque Isle and Fair Avenue, intersection illumination, utility replacement, sidewalk extensions, and all incidental items necessary to complete the projects. The design for this project was based upon the recommendations from the City of Marquette Traffic Study, the Lundin Truck Corridor Safety Plan, City Community Development Department, City Public Works Department, and the Police and Fire Departments. The design for these projects supports long-term safety and cost-saving benefits and is the first of several forthcoming intersection changes from signalized to roundabouts as presented in many city planning documents. Construction plans were developed by the City of Marquette Engineering Division with specialized assistance from DLZ of Michigan. The concept plans have been approved by the Planning Commission and the City Commission during capital outlay and budget sessions. Bids for the project were opened on April 28, 2017. 5 contractors responded to our request for bids. The results are summarized below. The engineer's estimate, bid as written, $4,576,395.34. Bid as checked came in at the same. Hebert Construction Company, $4,254,225.20. That bid came in checked as the same. Oberstar Inc., $4,563,526.25. Bid was checked as the same. James Peterson Sons Inc., $4,667,621.51. Bid as checked was the same. Baco Construction Company, $4,953,918.78. And the bid as checked was the same. And A. Lindbergh and Sons Inc., $5,914,586.82. Bid as checked was the same. Tabulation and checking of the bids found errors on contractor bids. Errors were mathematical and had no bearing on the final outcome. Fiscal effect, the Presque Isle Avenue and Wright Street reconstruction projects were approved under the fiscal year 2016-2017 budget. Funding will come from the fiscal year 2016-2017 bond package and from the Lundin Road Maintenance Fund, Wright Street. Recommendation, award a contract for the packaged reconstruction project of Presque Isle Avenue and Wright Street to Hebert Construction Company in the amount of $4,254,225.20 based on the quantities and unit prices bid and authorize the city manager to approve any unforeseen contingencies in an amount not to exceed 5% of the bid amount. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have a motion? Commissioner Baldini.
I would, excuse me, I move that we award a contract for the package reconstruction project of Presque Isle Avenue and Wright Street to Herbert Construction Company in the amount of $4,254,225.20, based on the quantities and unit price bid, and authorize the city manager to approve any unforeseen contingencies in the amount not to exceed 5% of the bid amount.
Do we have a second on this? Commissioner Plord.
Second.
Do we have any comments on this? Commissioner Baldini?
This is for the 3 roundabouts on the north end of town, 2 on Wright Street and the one at Presque Isle and Fair. Thank you. One of the things I think we should also remember here is that our long-term plan, I think for next year, is that we plan to do all of Presque Isle. So we're going to do the 2 roundabouts on Wright Street, and then the 3rd roundabout at the northern Michigan location. But also at that spot, we're tearing up that property, and we're also doing the infrastructure. And then next year, we'll build on the roundabout that we have there and do the rest of Presque Isle. Presque Isle needs it. It's in the long-term capital plan, and so this will take care of those road projects on the north end of town for this year.
Thank you. Commissioner Plord, anything to add?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one small thing. As a commissioner, you know, I've had to approve projects that cost money, and I've had to approve raising and fees and that. This is a project, when you look at the roundabout, I've become very, very fond of roundabouts in that they basically, you build them and you're done with them. If we put a traffic light there, then we're going to be paying electricity every day for the rest of the time that traffic light exists, when eventually we will put a roundabout there. If we wait longer, every day that we wait, the more it costs. And I really believe that we're going to have a roundabout there eventually. And I just as soon not pay for the electricity on a traffic light that can be better, you know, an intersection that can be better served with a roundabout. And so that's why I'm supporting this.
Commissioner Frazier?
I have no problem with the roundabouts. I know we have to go with the lowest bid, just the way the contractors have no control over how they bid. I know one of the contractors has a residence, has a department on that street. They pay city taxes. They'd be interested in doing it, but I guess if they were the low bidder, that's not, you know, our fault. But I know we have to go by the low bidding. But I just think we should look at that in the future as companies that are in the city that pay city taxes or are involved with the city, maybe giving them a little bit of benefit, even if they're not the high bidder or low bidder for projects.
Commissioner Campenzi.
Again, I think the Wright Street roundabouts will be a great improvement. Quick question, do we have a breakout, I guess, of the cost at each roundabout? It's all lumped into one, but specifically for the Fair Avenue and Presque Isle one?
Keith, can I ask you to help with that? Or?
That's not something we have available right here at this moment. We can get that answer to you, but we do have a breakdown of the costs.
Okay, and I guess the other thing I would like to know is the difference between just repaving it and fixing the infrastructure, which it desperately needs, and putting in the roundabout. I think that is information that a few community members would like to see as well. Again, I just want to reiterate that looking at our traffic study, not knowing what we're doing with the old hospital, and comments from the public on what they think driving that every day. I don't drive it every day. I think people would like to have a little more discussion on that particular intersection and those surrounding it.
See no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1. We now move to the last new business item of the evening, which is a resolution of necessity at 518 South 7th Street. City Clerk, could you give us the background?
Thank you, sir. As a result of the preferred alternative being chosen for the proposed transportation system improvements related to the relocation of the former Marquette General Hospital, various properties or portions thereof were identified as needing to be acquired for the project. Reasonable efforts have been made to reach an agreement with Linda Johnson and Jan Johnson for the purchase of their property at 518 South 7th Street. However, staff has been unable to reach an agreement with the owners for purchase of the property. Act 87 of 1980 provides procedures for the condemnation, acquisition, or exercise of eminent domain of real or personal property by public agencies. If property is to be acquired by a public agency through the exercise, a resolution of necessity approved by the public agency's governing body is required to commence the process. The city attorney has prepared the attached resolution of necessity for commission approval. Fiscal effect: the appraised value of the property is $153,000, which payment will be made and funded through the Brownfield Plan for the DLP Marquette General Replacement Hospital. This plan was approved by the Marquette City Commission on October 27, 2014. Funds for this project were obligated in the plan for this project. Recommendation: approve the resolution of necessity for acquisition of the property at 518 South 7th Street from Linda Johnson and Jan Johnson, and authorize the city clerk to sign the resolution. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Do we have a motion on this? Would someone care to make a motion on this item?
Can we speak?
You should have reserved time at public comment. You apparently want to speak on this item.
Yes.
Well, before he makes a motion, let's hold on this for a minute. Normal procedure is you do not speak because you do not reserve time to speak. You should have spoke when you had the opportunity. You could have reserved time to speak now. I don't mind listening. I mean, I can make that decision if you would like. I will give you 3 minutes if you would like to address us.
Sure. Would you like me to go up there? Can I?
Please, please. My first question: do members of the commission object to this at all? Okay. I see a lot of shaking heads. Yes.
Apologies for not speaking when I should have. This is my first city commission meeting, and I've been so dazzled with the performances tonight that I'm sorry about that.
Could we have name, address, please?
My name is Linda Johnson, and I live at 911 Wilson Street, but 518 South 7th
In Marquette.
In Marquette is my duplex. My sister and I own that jointly. When we first addressed the city about our duplex, we asked them if they could move our property. This is an investment property that we've invested in for our future. It not only augments our weekly or monthly income, but this is something for our retirement. This is something we invested over $12,000 last year in a new roof and a new furnace. We asked whether or not properties within the city could be addressed and perhaps that home be moved to those properties. We were there. I'm sorry, our attorney told me not to speak because I'd get too emotional. On November 18th, we received a call from an outside appraiser that said November 22nd she was available from 9 until 12 to do an appraisal. We had a 4-day notice with a 3-hour window. Neither one of us were available. We couldn't get in with our tenants. So we told her there's no way we can do it on that short of notice. What about a different time? What about a different day? We were refused. It was on November 22nd was the only time. As a result of that, the appraiser did an appraisal from the exterior of the building. And that's the value that they're offering us is based on that appraisal, where that person didn't even go inside to look to see what we've got. Now, we've got our own appraiser. We had that done last Monday, We don't have the report back. But I'm here to tell you that that appraisal is bogus. We have Jenn-Air ovens in each of those units. We have washers and dryers, garbage disposals, dishwashers, ceramic tile flooring in the kitchens and the baths. This is not an average duplex. This is something that we bought from Beth Pachesney, who had purchased it from someone from who had completely gutted it. It's like a brand new, it's only 25 years old, the mechanics of it. It's completely sided, like I said, a brand new roof and a brand new furnace, my God. And you're gonna base the appraisal on someone that just walked around the yard? And that's the money that you're gonna give us for a retirement investment that we made over 13 years ago. I think that's pretty crappy.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Time is up. Do we have a motion? What's that? Do we have a motion? Commissioner Frazier.
I make a motion to approve the resolution of necessity for acquisition of the property at 518 South 7th Street from Linda Johnson and Jan Johnson. Authorize city clerk to sign the resolution. Also would like the city manager to comment on this because I know he's done a lot of homework on this and it's been a long-term thing, but if you could just comment on it, it'd be great.
We'll get to him. We need a second first. Would somebody care to second this? Commissioner Plard?
I second.
Commissioner Frazier, do you have any further comments at this time? None? Commissioner Plard?
I have a question for Ms. Johnson.
Yes. Oh, sure. Sorry.
Ms. Johnson, did you offer the city a price of your own configuration for your property?
You know what we did was we tried to think about, when I consulted an attorney last year, I was told that because they were trying to acquire this property for a private entity, that there's no way that the city would be able to take it from us. So we were kind of going on that thought process. And then the legal counsel that I had consulted with last year had also said they have to, if they wanted to acquire that property, they'd have to go with highest and best. We had said to the city, we're happy to work with you. We want to see the new hospital succeed. We want the road to be widened, but this is a retirement.
My question, ma'am.
Your question was, did we come up with? So I took the value of the home and increased it by 4% for 20 years. And then I took the average net that we get and multiplied that by 12 by 20. Because that's highest and best. We intend to keep the property for that amount of time. Property will accrue at 4%. Every year. That's how any lending institution will find out what a property is worth.
So did you come up with a price?
I came up with a very lowball price of $500,000.
Interesting.
And that's,
Thank you.
Pardon me?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more comments? City manager, do I have one? Commissioner Reynolds.
Well, since we've asked the city manager to speak, we'll let him continue. But I'm gonna have a couple questions, so I might as well ask you, and then you can go. Is the 153 the actual value, or is that the value plus the 25% that we could offer? That's question one. Question two: what happens if we do not approve to our change into the streetscape, because this is important for us to be able to continue with our street? And then I'll wait for my next one.
Okay. I want to help answer some of those questions, but Jen was our lead person on that, so I'm going to let her answer those right now.
Yeah, the 153 is what our appraiser came back as the actual value. The 125 what 125% was more like 191, and then I actually verbally offered them 250. The streetscape, Dennis could.
Can you please repeat the streetscape question?
Well, we've known for some time, regardless of Duke being replaced over there, that we would have to upgrade that area-ish in that whole entire 7th Street. And I was asking what would happen if this property wasn't taken and we don't upgrade that. What will happen to the upgrading of the streets and changing it around? Like, how difficult would it be continue on?
No, the taking of the property is completely necessary for the project due to the intersection that's been approved on the MDOT permit and through the environmental assessment that was approved.
Okay, that's what I was asking in a very convoluted way. Thank you.
I have a question for Mrs. Johnson. You say that the appraiser that the city sent over just looked at the outside of the house.
Yes, I'm on my way. Yes, they didn't go inside. You can't do an appraisal by walking around a property. That's not an effective appraisal. I'm a real estate agent. That's no way, shape, or form as a bogus appraisal.
Okay, let me ask you this. I don't know if it's necessary to have 2 different appraisers do an appraisal each. What if one of our appraiser from the city went to the house and got inside and did an appraisal? Would you allow that?
We've already paid for an appraiser. So an appraiser has already been there a week ago today to have the appraisal. Now, I was told today that, in fact, the city probably should have offered me my own appraisal, but that didn't take place. But that's neither here nor there. The appraisal that took place is bogus. You cannot effectively appraise a property by walking around it. And the fact that the city paid for that and based their amount on what they were going to give us for retirement property on that appraisal is ridiculous.
Who's doing the appraisal for you, if I could ask?
Appraisal Associates.
Where are they located?
Here in Marquette.
Okay. Is it?
And they'll be doing that by an income approach, which is appropriate for a property that actually generates income.
This is just a wild question, but it's always been in the back of my mind. I'm sorry if I've taken up time. Okay, so if you took that money and you bought another duplex, right? You gonna buy another duplex?
You know, I don't know. The whole point is, the hard thing is, I wouldn't be able to find a duplex that's in that shape, that's in that current shape the way it is. We've spent 13 years improving that duplex, and it was already in good standing. Every single thing in that duplex is within 25 years old. It was totally gutted, replumbed, rewired, drywalled, reconfigured. This is like a brand or 25-year-old home.
When do you get this? When are you going to get this figure back? This appraisal figure from?
We should have it. She told me that was between 7 to 10 business days. But you can't base an offer on an appraisal when you didn't even go into the property.
Well, he wasn't able to.
Shame on you.
So it's 50-50. Commissioner Conley,
offered several different options to go in because I was the one who talked to her. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution. Commissioner Cambenzi.
I just want to make one last comment for the night on this, and that is that the biggest issue I had with what we agreed to do, widen the street, keep the route where it was, not look for alternative options in terms of maybe swinging the road around the backside of those houses to preserve the neighborhood. And we talked about that tonight, how important neighborhoods are. And even though this is a rental, it's an income property, and there were points that I can agree with the woman who spoke to us, and that is when you do make those investments, you do the upgrades, you put money into it, you live there, you learn to live with the things you like and don't like about the neighborhood. For me, I am in that situation. I live in a family home. I'm in a neighborhood that I wouldn't probably choose at this point in my life, but I've put so much work and time into it, there becomes an emotional attachment to it. And I think the people that have spoken to us that live over in the 7th Street neighborhood, I think they want us to recognize that disparity of perhaps how they feel about their homes, that you could put a price tag on it, you could move them, but I think what they're asking us is, did we do our due diligence to find other alternatives to preserve the neighborhood? And, you know, at the time, it was 3 options. We were only looking at those 3 options. We weren't allowed to look at any alterations to them. And I think some of those alterations at the time to the configuration there would have limited this. They would have preserved that neighborhood better. And I think if there's one thing that those who agree with me on my no votes on this hospital would say, is that we didn't think of the community enough while we were negotiating through this agreement. And I think this is an example to me where it's come to a point that no community likes to make this action or take this action. And I feel like it's extremely unfortunate that the City Commission is here at this time having to do this. I will be voting no on it for the reason of I think we did have other ways that we could have preserved this neighborhood in its entirety that would have really been a boon for the taxes and the people that live there.
Commissioner Conley?
A question for the city manager. Will the 7th Street redesign take this entire property out, destroy the duplex, or are we taking feet off the front yard? How does this, what happens to the property? Is there any value left to it?
Commissioner, the reason we're taking the entire parcel and the property is because of the requirements per the plan. Will it go 21 feet into the lot? We looked at moving the house back on the lot and other options. There's simply just not enough room on there to make that happen. So, you know, if it were just a situation where we needed a little bit of property and could have moved the house, we would have done that.
Okay.
We had it analyzed by zoning staff. Andrea spent probably a day looking at all the different alternatives with that.
Okay. Next question is the city manager and maybe the attorney too. This is the required step before we proceed with the procedure to declare eminent domain. Is that right?
This is the first step.
This is the first step. Is there anything that precludes further negotiation while we go through the steps of eminent domain?
No.
So that we could take this step, keep the project moving ahead, and ask our city manager to continue to negotiate?
It's part of the process, and we can do that.
So we don't have to step back then from negotiations if we
But we have to
approve this
initiate
step.
this process, otherwise we'll be sitting here a month from now in the same boat.
Yeah, I know, I understand that. That's what I'm saying. But we can start down this path now, but in the meantime, while we're waiting for our date in court, we can try to resolve it.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Well, it's essentially the same question I have that Commissioner Conley just brought up. But with that, if we approve this for the resolution for this amount of money, can that amount of money change later in the court proceedings? You think I know that, but
If it does, we would come back to you, because I
Okay.
know what you're approving here.
understood.
Mayor, I don't think that the motion sets the price, if you read that. So then that can still be determined by either the court or by negotiation.
Okay, I'd like to call the question. We need a roll call on this because it's a resolution. City Clerk?
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Cambenzi,
No.
Commissioner Conley,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier,
Yes.
Commissioner Plord,
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldini,
Yes.
Mayor Campana.
Yes, that passes 6-1. We now move to the second public comment of the evening. Again, you have 3 minutes if you wish to address us. If you haven't given us your name, address, please do. I'm going to open public comment. Would anyone care to address us?
Yes, at this late hour. Nancy Semenoff, 1314 Picnic Rocks Drive in Marquette. Just want to commend you for being proactive in setting some conditions for the short-term rentals. Those of you that recognize it's certainly easier to modify something than it is to set new conditions if the situation warranted it. So I applaud you for what you did. Which brings me to the second point, and that is I want to raise the issue of the Lakeshore, the former Lakeshore Foundry, and the condition of that. We're approaching another summer season. I'm curious to know, and I don't pretend to know the details of the expectations for no longer used properties. The orphanage was a case where we looked at that for years before something was done, and now it's turning into something good. But I would like to know what's happening. I inquired a year ago, and there was going to be fines, but there was going to be a delay, and they had to do certain things to make the place safe, at least, so the shingles weren't flying off into other people's properties, and there were safety issues. Then now we're back to the same situation, and nothing's being done. So it's not only an eyesore for those who are residents in the neighborhoods and the condominium situations and in the tourists that come, it's also an issue for the tourists that come through as well. So I want to ask that you take some action on that so that something will be done to make that a better piece of property. And just on a positive note, an observation, as a resident of the city, it would be interesting if every resident was compelled to come to at least one city commission meeting a year. It certainly would be instructive, and I think there'd be a greater appreciation for the kinds of issues that you face. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Yorma Lankinen, 8 Marquette Drive here in the city of Marquette. I know it's after the fact, and I'm not here to try to be kicking a dead horse while it is, but I'd like to make a couple of corrections. We as a Landfill Authority Board did not change our mind. We did what was forced upon procedurally by a municipality, so that was the action that we had to take. As I said earlier, it's a due process, so we did not change our mind. So in essence, you have reverse the decision of your representatives. Secondly, it is 100%. It was in the document that was sent to you. It's 100% requirement from all the municipalities, not 75%. It's written on your document. It says 100% on that. And the county saying that they voluntarily reaffirmed, they did not voluntarily reaffirm. They were approached by Darlene Welch and their attorney at public comment. It was not a item at all, and they were caught off guard without any preparation, so it was an illegal vote to begin with, and that's a different issue altogether. And that's what I said earlier, it became a political football, which in Landfill Authority's business, we're not used to political footballs, and we don't do very well with that. We're designed to handle solid waste and represent all 22 municipalities fairly, and this is the first time that we have been in this political football game, and yes, we don't do well at this, but corrections are, and the English language is such, that's why we have attorneys, that you can manipulate the English language in any format that you wish, and it's been manipulated to where it is right now. And unfortunately, you did reverse your representative's decision. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Frank Jefferto. These are my opinions. All parties agree that the manager alerted this board of his intent to destroy the trees at South Beach and made a public mockery of me in the process. When no members bothered to respond, he announced his intention here on March 13th, hours before his assault. I firmly believe the trees would be lost even if Mr. Campana knew no one on that street. What's obvious is that $4,500 was wasted to alter public space for a private view because there's no possible benefit to the public at large. While we know the manager arranged this, he was astute enough not to say he knew the people, unlike Mr. Campana, who on March 27th said that he knows, quote, pretty much everybody on that street, end quote. Still, this is far from proof. My comments were stated as opinions, inference, and under the premise that he's ultimately accountable for what occurs within our city limits. Whether he's made to look bad is not our concern. I admit trying to make him look bad, though not through lies or intended exaggeration. How bad he looks ought to concern those who appreciate nature, being that more damage has occurred to public space without the long-requested public process, all to benefit maybe 10 families at a waste of $4,500 public dollars. He neglected to respond to that because he seems more concerned with how he looks than the welfare of our parklands. Suspicion rose because the assault provided no benefit to the greater public. One of his reasons was so people can reach the beach easier. They'd need hip waders, at least last week, and he accused me of lying. In truth, users will use the same two paths that were already ideally situated. He may think the assault looks nice from Lake Street, but it's an eyesore for trail and beach users. Standing water with wood chips around it. How appealing is that? Our gorgeous city has fallen into the hands of a board whose majority has no conception of the value of our natural treasures that they systematically whittle away at without conscience, like termites attack wood and cancer eats live tissue. Same mentality. More important than who knew who is our need to get proactive to avoid further needless assaults and wasted tax dollars. The public is urged to inspect the damage at South Beach as well as the public record. In saying I lied, Mr. Campana exaggerated and overemphasized my words, claiming I'd said he'd, quote, used his influence as mayor to benefit a handful of friends, end quote. April 24th, I quoted my April 10th statement to acquaint the audience with what sentence he took issue with. He took this as a fresh comment, ignoring the explanation that followed, perhaps because of his propensity to not offer public comment his undivided attention. He became too fixated on that one sentence to absorb anything else. Just one look at that eyesore and he hasn't a case to cry on. While some people are known to lie, Google Maps images do not. A small ecosystem was ruined, not just clumps of junk trees.
Anyone else? Anyone else wish to address the commission? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment. We're going to move to comments from the commission. We'll start with Commissioner Cambenzi.
Well, every meeting I come to, I hope it's the last one I vote no for on a hospital project. I'm just sick of it. But I would just like to say to my colleagues, even though I feel strongly about this project and I haven't agreed with the majority, I just would like to thank you for your respect and allowing me to feel how I feel and vote how I vote. I think it's really important. When people ask me what is my favorite thing about being on the city commission, I do have to say that it's being able to sit with 7 people who have different opinions and varying reasons for why they feel that way, and to make very, very tough, complex decisions and come back at the end of the day, the next time we're together, and sit down and wipe the slate clean and be able to sit with each other and take on that next problem. These are life skills that have helped me in my life, whether it's my job, my friends, family, everything. So tough votes for sure. Doesn't mean I don't respect my colleagues or certainly city staff for all their hard work. Sometimes we just feel differently. And with that, I would just like to thank our mayor, Dave Campana. I sat here tonight and thought, not only with the difficult votes and the difficult subjects that we had to deal with, you're running the meeting. And that just adds one more level of stress, and certainly duty that you have to do. So thank you for being our leader. I think you do a great job, and I guess that's all I have tonight.
Commissioner Frazier?
So now we have a record for the city with the most roundabouts, and we have a record for close to the longest meeting. I've never been commissioned that long, but it's probably a record for close to one of the longest meetings. I'm not sure, but I think it's a good thing to look at. I think Dave Caveira does a great job, and the city manager throws all this stuff in front of us, and it's up to Dave Caveira to try and figure out a way to manage it all. And the other thing on the agenda I would like to comment is that the city is agreeing with the Maritime Museum about the lighthouse project, and I think that's something they could look at again in a year. I'm not involved with the Maritime Museum, but I know a lot of people down there, and I think it'd be a good thing to look at maybe in a year to see how the process works, and maybe maybe you could sit down with their board. I don't know. Let Ron figure it out. He's the legal expert. I'm sure he worked hard on doing the legal aspects of it, so I won't get into that process. I think city manager told me they acquired while moving the house. I mean, you see all those shows, they flip houses, they move houses, and city manager said the house could not be moved as far as the process moving it. They said the company they contacted said the house just falls apart if they're to move it. I don't know if it's true, but that's what we understand. And as far as the tree, Lakeshore, I know a couple families down there, I know a couple business owners down there, and it's nothing that the city, Dave was not responsible for this. The city manager made the decision for the city benefit to prevent overgrowth. It's been an overgrowth problem for years, and they've had problems of people, sneak out with the chainsaw at night and cut the trees down. They tried to prevent this in the future of trying to, possibly problems in the future. So they contacted the city arborist. He looked at it and he said, yes, it was overgrown. We had to do something about it. The city manager took responsibility of doing it, and he did a good job taking care of it. And I'm a person that enjoys nature. I enjoy the harbors and everything, so that's how I'm going to cut down some overgrown trees. That's how me, and I think comments directed at the mayor are not responsible because, it wasn't really his decision. Just because he knows some people on Lakeshore doesn't mean that they're benefited by it. Because I know people on Lakeshore too, and we got the message after the trees were chopped, and I didn't see a benefit to my people I know on Lakeshore. It wasn't a benefit to them, by me. They didn't ask me, could I chop them down? It just happened. So I think that'll be coming. And also, I think I saw a note in the city, the news about the accident at Little Presque Isle last year, and how they're donating, maybe getting a drone to help people rescue. And that's the thing I'd like people to remind. We're not summer weather yet. It's coming. Probably July 4th, we might have good weather. Maybe by July 4th, it might be sunny enough to swim. I don't know. I know the guy that runs the Chamber of Commerce would like to surf in a wetsuit. That's a different story altogether. But I think just, look at your phones, look at the weather apps, and just monitor the weather. If you see high winds, go to the beach, but don't go swimming. Just look at weather forecasts and just keep an eye on there to prevent future problems.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldini.
Your Honor, it has been a long evening. It's not the longest one. We started off with solid waste at 4 o'clock, okay? And that's going to be another contract that's going to be coming to us in another couple of months. So, I sat here tonight in the last couple of meetings and looking forward. I remember when the food truck issue came up, and somebody said, if you get elected, what you going to do about it? And I said, well, first of all, let's think about it this way. Nobody else in the UP is talking about food trucks. Why? Because they don't have them, okay? Says something about what's happening to Marquette. And the staff went out and did some searching and found that other communities had dealt with this issue. It's going to be some interesting, challenging times in Marquette. We're moving forward. And communities that invest in themselves, new roads, new sewer, new water, challenging issues like Airbnb. Okay, nobody else in the UP is dealing with it. Why? They probably don't have a lot of people coming to their town saying they want to stay there, okay? Thank you all for your patience. Nancy, I'm not so sure everybody would want to sit through one of these meetings all the time. But they are going to be, we're going to have some interesting challenges this year and next year. And we're going to get through it. because as you saw here tonight, it's a group of people who do not believe that we have to have unanimous votes. We challenge one another's thinking and reasoning, and we keep moving forward. And to thank our manager and the city staff for really providing information to keep us moving forward. It's going to be an interesting, challenging time the next year, year and a half. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Reynolds?
Well, I'm not going to add too much. It's been a long meeting. I think the only things that I agreed on this evening, the 100%, were the appointments and reappointments on this list. Nothing else on this list I enjoyed doing. But it's part of doing the job. And just ditto to what Commissioner Combenzi said, working with all these people, it doesn't always feel good while you're sitting up here trying to argue your point and why it should be one way or the other, but we always get done, and we're always good colleagues. So that is all.
Commissioner Plort?
I agree, and I thank Commissioner Combenzi for those words, because that's how I feel about the commission, and I think it's a good thing that we do challenge each other, because we don't walk in lockstep. We have our own ideas, and they are respected, and we do respect each other, and then we do talk to each other afterwards. We understand that we're intelligent people. To Mr. Verito, you were very lucid early in the meeting, and then you got fluffy and a waste of time again. I communicated with you via email that I wanted to hear your ideas on the city entering in an agreement with the Maritime Museum Association, Peter White Library, bond and debt service millage, and Flink Farm earthwork contract. And going by your line of reasoning, I can only conclude that you either didn't think those subjects were worthy of your comment, or they weren't flashy enough. I'm going to conclude, based on the way you conclude, that that's the case. Okay, that's your right. You can do that. I think everybody that waited, I sympathize with the Johnsons. I really do, and I sympathize with the hoteliers and everybody, and with the bed and breakfast on the Airbnb situation. They are difficult situations. I understand, as I've mentioned many times before, that I'm in a position where I'm going to make decisions that are not popular. I agree with Commissioner Reynolds, and a lot of these decisions that I made, I'm not happy with. But they had to be made. In my considered opinion, it was something that had to be done, and so we did it. I do appreciate Commissioner Combenzi's comments, and don't have a problem if she disagrees, because we do get to hear good ideas about why we should disagree in some cases. Everybody that came up to public comment, absolutely appreciate your comments. Please continue to do that. I appreciate you being direct and specific about city business and what we're doing, or what we may do, or what we've done recently in the past with this board. But it's difficult, but I took the job and I'm sticking with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Conley?
I'd like to congratulate and thank the team of women and men who have been building our municipal service center. It's an outstanding record of safety. They've worked almost a year now without a reportable incident. Likewise, the team that's building the hospital, the Klausner Skanska team, has similarly just been given an award by MIOSHA for their exemplary safety record. Job safety is a team commitment. It's not just being safe yourself, it's being committed to your team members and keeping them safe. So it really is an accomplishment, and I want to thank them for doing this on two really big projects in our city. These are not just people that work for the city, they're our friends and neighbors, and their safety is important. About working together or disagreeing. I've always said, if you look back, you'll be run over by oncoming traffic. We need to keep looking forward. And I've always said that no matter which side of the argument I ended up on. So we're moving forward. As for Ms. Weiss-Seminoff's idea of requiring citizens to come to City Commission, I'd remind you that torture is illegal.
But we love torture. That's why we are here. This was a long evening, lots of issues, but I'm glad we waded through them, and I think we did well addressing them. Hopefully we put short-term rentals to rest for a while. I'm sure that's going to come back to, and we want to look at it later. it's going to evolve and evolve. Ms. Johnson, I hope that we can reach a mutual agreement with you. I hope when you get your appraisal back, we'd like to see it. We hope you and the city can come to an agreement here. Our next meeting is 3 weeks because there's 5 Mondays in this month. I believe City Clerk will, May 30th, which is the Tuesday because of Memorial Day. So we'll see you then. City Manager.
Just two things. Just to remind the commission that we're working on a new website to address Mr. Lutenberger's comments earlier. That is going along very well. And Wednesday at 10 a.m., Peter White Public Library, open office hours for those who would like to attend. Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.